In the arena of Star System 27, Chun Mang drew everyone's attention when they used the demon-revealing mirror and confirmed that his void behemoth was level 100. This was equivalent to a level 100 defensive accessory, something no one in the entire star system possessed. Everyone wanted to make contact immediately, but the white-haired old man stopped them because of Project Apocalypse. They had been secretly preparing for over 100 years, hoarding spirit stones and resources from the fragments of the immortal realm, waiting for a trained captain with enough potential to go all in, all to overthrow the Casa civilization. Chun Mang was the brightest candidate, but they knew too little about him, so they didn't dare to start the gamble just yet. Let's continue following Chun Mang into the next episode. Normally, a void behemoth with such potential could take thousands, even tens of thousands of years to grow from its larval stage. There was only one way to significantly shorten its maturation time: the behemoth carriage, researched and developed by mechanical civilizations. And possessing a level 100 void behemoth in this way meant the train had a level 100 defensive accessory. Level 100. In the entire Star System 27, no civilization possessed a train with a level 100 defensive accessory, because the sheer amount of resources required to upgrade it to that level was enough to make anyone suffocate just hearing about it. That's being so rich that even your words clink like gold. Right then, everyone suddenly noticed a furry little ball crawl out from Chun Mang's robes. Its tiny hands trembled slightly as its curious eyes peered toward the arena. Quick, don't you have a demon-revealing mirror? Take it out and check. Another middle-aged man hurriedly pulled a demon-revealing mirror from his chest and channeled his spiritual chi into it. Soon, the information appeared. His face twitched with excitement. It's confirmed. It really is level 100. His void behemoth is actually level 100. He is the most suitable candidate we've ever seen. Let me make contact with him. No. At this moment, the white-haired old man sitting in the middle leaned on his cane and gently shook his head. His cloudy eyes flashed with a hint of world-weary exhaustion. Project Apocalypse was a plan that had been secretly in motion for over a century, under the immense pressure of the entire cultivation world. Right now, we haven't accumulated enough resources. It's not time to initiate it yet. Furthermore, we know far too little about him. The only information we have is that his name is Chun Mang, and he has a method to conceal the level of his train accessories. His entry identity is with the Izao Merchant Guild in Sanshui City on planet Xioa. He's essentially a civilization-less wanderer. As for the rest, we're completely in the dark. The old man paused for a beat before continuing. His bone age is under 30. To achieve such strength at his age proves that his methods and power are quite impressive. But we have no guarantees regarding his temperament. Hearing this, it was as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over everyone. They fell into silence once more. Choosing an investment candidate like this was literally rolling the gacha with their entire fortune. One miss, and they'd be wiped out. Although the outside world called them a cultivation civilization, in their hearts, they always considered themselves a civilization of the people. In their culture, there was an ancient saying, "Man's will conquers the heavens." Cultivation is walking against the heavens. What is there to fear? The borders were destroyed, countless cultivation civilizations were annihilated, and only they survived. Were they really willing to become animals in a zoo for tourists to gawk at? No, absolutely not. People under extreme pressure often hatch crazy plans, and thus, Project Apocalypse was born. The sect leaders of the 5 great sects and the heads of the 3 great families set aside their grudges, gathered in a secret chamber, and debated for 49 days before finally giving birth to this plan. All for a single goal: to restore planet Xuanwu to its former glory and never be slaves again. 100 years ago, they discovered the existence of countless fragments of the immortal realm and went mad with joy. They immediately allowed the soul formation seniors hidden within their factions to enter the fragments to cultivate. They wanted to rely on the resources inside to cultivate into immortals and overthrow the rule of the Casa civilization. But soon, they realized that idea was far too naive. Their resource utilization efficiency was too low, cultivation required a long time, and the loss of high-level immortal arts meant their strategy couldn't be fully realized. Even if they reached their peak state, they still couldn't stand against the Casa civilization. In the current universe, the mechanical train ecosystem was clearly much more suited for combat than their cultivation ecosystem. Therefore, after 49 days of debate, Project Apocalypse was finalized, fighting fire with fire. The plan was simple: hoard all the immortal realm fragments and massive amounts of spirit stones. Stop using them for cultivation and instead stockpile them for 100 years, 1,000 years, even several thousand years. Just keep accumulating until they met a train captain with enough potential, someone truly worth investing in. When that time came, they would pour all their resources into that person. With the 1,000-year foundation of the entire planet Xuanwu, they would sponsor a train powerful enough to overthrow the Casa civilization's rule. It was an insane gamble, betting the entire future of planet Xuanwu on a single person. But once this plan was set, they had steadfastly executed it for a whole century. Massive amounts of iron ore mined from the immortal realm fragments were secretly stashed away, while Zhongzhou City thrived just to earn more iron ore. They bowed their heads to the Casa civilization garrison, acting as subservient as possible. All of this was just to accumulate spirit stones, waiting for the right person to go all in. Yes, 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 the middle-aged man who spoke first said, pulling a shadow recording stone from his chest and crushing it. Soon, everything that happened 3 days ago was projected. There was no sound, but the images were clear. He pointed and explained. Initially, these factions were hostile to each other, tangled up in primal sins like betrayal, greed, and stupidity. But after Qin Mang talked to them, they turned from enemies to friends and even formed a united front. Moreover, it was supposed to be a life-and-death battle. But at the last minute, Qin Mang spared young Master Li's void behemoth, making young Master Li completely submit to him. Throughout the entire process, he didn't show a single negative trait. I think his temperament is definitely trustworthy. Even so, it's a no. The pavilion master of Tianji Pavilion, sitting in the middle, shook his head and said in a deep voice, "You're too hasty. I know you want to see the Casa civilization collapse as soon as possible, but our Project Apocalypse has only been in motion for 100 years. The accumulated resources are still not enough. The original plan was for at least 1,000 years. Maybe 5,000, 10,000, or even over tens of thousands of years. Qin Mang might be suitable, but he appeared too early. Our current resources aren't enough. Perhaps it sounded like the right person at the wrong time. Except this wrong time was measured in millennia. At this moment, a gentle-looking man sitting nearby spoke up thoughtfully. Pavilion Master, perhaps our plan can be altered a bit. Qin Mang managed to upgrade his train's defensive accessory to level 100. This proves he probably isn't lacking in resources and has his own unique methods. 1,000 years from now, he might develop to the point where he can destroy the Casa civilization on his own. By then, giving him our resources would be pointless. But right now is different. This is offering charcoal in a snowstorm. He's in his startup phase. Planet Xuanwu's century of accumulated resources might not seem like much, but to him, it's not a small amount. When he matures in the future, this favor will become a shield protecting planet Xuanwu. The Tianji Pavilion Master fell silent for a long time before saying hoarsely, "The outside world doesn't know that planet Xuanwu produces Mafe stones. Currently, all the Mafe stones are being secretly hoarded. According to our plan, we are to use the Mafe stones along with massive resources to push a train to the absolute peak. Without enough Mafe stones, it will be hard to break through the limits set by the Casa civilization. But it's only been 100 years. We haven't stockpiled enough Mafe stones yet. Initiating the plan now simply won't deliver a decisive, fatal blow. It's a gamble. What if he fails to mature? Are we supposed to restart the plan all over again?" Project Apocalypse was always a gamble to begin with. A beautiful woman sitting in the corner looked at Qin Mang in the stands and said calmly, "We've already made the first bet. Why not make a second?" Back then, I didn't agree with this plan. Handing the future of planet Xuanwu over to an outsider is a pipe dream. The middle-aged man with a scar on his face said grimly, "The plan is already set. Don't bring up the past. If we don't rely on this plan, do we rely on ourselves? Are you blind to how massive the gap between us is?" I know very well." The beautiful woman nodded, her expression unwavering. That's why, even though I disagreed, I still resolutely executed the plan. And now, I think it's time to initiate it. What is the most important thing in Project Apocalypse? Is it Planet Xuanwu's foundation? No, it's the person. A suitable person. Chun Mang has the methods, the temperament, and the ability. He's a civilization-less wanderer with no political stance, possesses a level 100 void behemoth, and keeps a low profile. He perfectly fits the best choice for our plan. What does a level 100 void behemoth even mean? It could easily slaughter the entirety of Planet Xuanwu. But look at him right now. Is he any different from anyone else? No. He looks just like an ordinary person. Put yourselves in his shoes. If you had the power to destroy the world in the blink of an eye, would you sit in the stands, giggling and watching the show like a normal person? Having world-destroying power, yet sitting there enjoying the show like it's a festival. Just hearing it sounds terrifyingly unbelievable. He is the most suitable person we've seen in recent years. There is no one else. Most importantly, he doesn't have a wife. He perfectly meets all the requirements of our plan. Hearing this, everyone fell silent. They all turned their heads to look at the Tianji Pavilion Master, waiting for his opinion. The Tianji Pavilion Master closed his eyes for a long time. Then, leaning back in his chair and resting on his cane, he slowly opened his eyes, looked at Chun Mang in the stands, and muttered, "Everyone, at this moment, we are deciding the fate of the entire planet Xuanwu. The destiny of billions of lives rests in our hands. Once the plan is exposed, planet Xuanwu will face the grand army of the Casa civilization. I hope that before making a decision, everyone thinks about it. Think, and then think even harder. I'm old. I'm no longer as decisive as you young folks. I just searched my soul and realized that my reluctance to decide isn't because I think Chun Mang is unsuitable. It's simply because I don't dare to make this decision. I don't have many years left to live. I wanted to drag this out until I died, and then leave this decision to all of you. When I realized that, I started to feel afraid." He paused for a beat before continuing. "The 7 of you. Let's have a show of hands. Whoever decides to put Chun Mang on the list of executors for Project Apocalypse, raise your hand." The next moment, all 7 people raised their hands in unison. Passed unanimously. Very well. The Tianji Pavilion Master stood up tremblingly, turned around, and walked out. Begin executing the plan. Let's hope things don't turn out too terribly. Withdraw the pawns planted beside the other candidates. Prepare to focus all our efforts on making contact with Chun Mang. Over the years, they had found quite a few candidates and planted pawns beside each of them to evaluate their temperament and potential. For example, young Master Li of the Datong civilization, the train captain of the Philia pirate group, and Zhang Chusheng of planet Furong. The most important thing was always evaluating their temperament. In this transaction, planet Xuanwu was at a complete disadvantage. With inferior strength, they couldn't guarantee whether the other party would actually protect planet Xuanwu once they matured. The only things they could rely on were 2 points. First, gratitude. Second, love. With gratitude, they would remember planet Xuanwu's gamble. With love, they would be willing to stay bound for the long haul. Over the years, their 8 great families had secretly raised 19 fairy maidens and fairy youths. Every single one of them was proficient in the 4 arts: zither, go, calligraphy, and painting. Their beauty and figures were absolutely peerless in the mortal realm. The sole purpose was for political marriage. Only by becoming husband and wife, and then having children, could they bind that train captain tightly to planet Xuanwu. This was also their only method of restraint, and it was a method that only worked on a specific type of person. Therefore, it also became a crucial standard for them to evaluate temperament. Oh right, the Tianji Pavilion Master hadn't even stepped out the door when he tremblingly stopped and said softly, "Keep cultivating those 8 fairy youths. Don't worry about wasting resources. Even though the one we chose is a man, we can't be sure if he actually likes women. We can only hope he likes women. Otherwise, not being able to have children will be a huge problem. Without children, it's hard for him to care too much about planet Xuanwu." A grand millennium-long plan, and in the end, they had to pray that the guy's tastes were normal. Such is life. The remaining 7 watched the old man's departing back. After a long silence, they sighed softly. The pavilion master has gotten old. He used to be so full of vigor. He once said he wanted to scheme against the world, using the people of the world as his chess pieces to set up an earth-shattering game. A game that, once opened, would shake the entire realm. This chess game was originally proposed by the pavilion master himself. Now that it's time to begin, he's the one who's afraid. Who wouldn't be afraid? The beautiful woman walked over to the window. She muttered softly, "The Kasa civilization's rule over the past century has been like a mountain pressing down on the pavilion master's head. He used to be so proud. Yet, when a petty leader of the Kasa garrison spat in his face, he had to smile and wipe it off himself. The pavilion master once said that while enduring is the right thing to do, it wears down one's will. Endure too long, and you truly become a coward. He knows, but it's hard to fight against it. Then let's just start according to the plan." The middle-aged man with the scar narrowed his eyes and said, "I'll have the fairy maiden from my family make contact with him first. Then we'll find a way to plant a pawn beside him to reevaluate his potential and temperament, just to be safe." "We already have someone for that," another person replied. "The person beside him is the sect master of the venomous snake sect." The two seem very close. This is a good sign. At least it proves he doesn't see us as monkeys in a zoo, but treats us as equals. I'll contact him. Soon, the seven exchanged glances and quickly left the secret chamber, returning to their airships to begin mobilizing resources with all their might. Once Project Apocalypse was initiated, it was no longer about tentative contact or planting pawns like before. Because Chun Mang was no longer a candidate. He was the final, unanimously chosen person. His temperament and potential had already been evaluated as perfect, but just to be careful, they would verify it one more time from close range. According to protocol, Chun Mang should have been put on the candidate list to compete and be evaluated alongside the others. But after digging deeper, they completely bypassed this entire process, canceled all other candidacies, and locked him in as the final choice. Good judges of talent are common, but a winged steed is hard to find. No matter how good the grass is, it's only worth feeding to the right horse. While the vast majority of people, including the Kasa civilization garrison, were gathered in Zhongzhou City to watch the spectacle, the entire cultivation world had already begun to surge with undercurrents beneath a flurry of rapid orders. Choosing Zhongzhou City had another major purpose: to softly imprison the Kasa garrison. Those guys instinctively loved staying in comfortable places, and they had gotten trapped in that comfort without even realizing it. Project Apocalypse was officially initiated. This was Planet Xuanwu's first counterattack, and also its last, regardless of success or failure. Within the Kasa Civilization Federation, quite a few civilizations had rebelled and been annihilated. But that still didn't stop countless other civilizations from secretly accumulating power, waiting to strike back. They would rather die trying. It was a gamble betting a century of foundation and the entire future of Planet Xuanwu on Chun Mang. If they won, everyone would be happy. Planet Xuanwu, along with a wave of immigration, would see a massive surge in cultivators, rebuild the immortal realm, and return to its former glory. If they lost, Planet Xuanwu would be buried alongside Chun Mang, with billions of lives dying a step ahead of him. It sounds light, but the reality was, win and ascend, lose and be erased. At the same time, within the Kasa Civilization Federation, at a space station near planet Xioha, in Star System 27, a middle-aged man with a gloomy face punched the screen hard. This space station belonged to the Kasa civilization and served as a strategic deployment point. And he had just discovered that out of the 13 hidden strategic wormholes belonging to Star System 27, another one had been activated. That meant 2 had been activated. Damn it. Over a year ago, when only 1 was activated, he could still report it to his superiors as a natural dissipation. But a few days ago, another one popped up. How the hell was he supposed to report this now? Within a single year, 2 of the 13 hidden strategic wormholes, created by the Kasa Federation at an astronomical cost, just naturally dissipated? Who was he kidding? It would be a miracle if the higher-ups didn't send an investigator down. Once they found out he had deliberately fabricated the truth a year ago, he was completely screwed. He obviously knew who activated these 2 wormholes. It was a year ago, when he was drunk and accidentally pulled a stranger into a group chat. thereby leaking the coordinates of all 13 wormholes, getting drunk and adding the wrong person to a chat, resulting in the entire strategic system blowing up. Talk about a once-in-a-lifetime kind of stupid. But he couldn't report this now. If he did, he'd still die. He was dead either way. After a long time, he stared at the star map on the screen, deep in thought. Then, he gritted his teeth. Go destroy the remaining 11 hidden strategic wormholes. Then I'll report that the Zerg invaded and used unknown methods to destroy all the hidden strategic wormholes. Star System 27 is the closest to the Zerg. Although it's still tens of thousands of light years away, the Zerg's methods are notoriously mysterious and unpredictable. Saying that should sound plausible enough. Just hearing it, you knew he was preparing a textbook scapegoat operation. Yes, sir. The adjutant standing next to him immediately turned pale, his voice trembling. Yes, sir. These 13 hidden strategic wormholes cost the Casa civilization tens of trillions of iron or units. They are extremely crucial strategic deployment points. Once war breaks out, the Casa army can quickly advance into Zerg territory and outer deployment zones through these wormholes. The cost of creating wormholes without being detected by the Zerg is already astronomical. Now we've lost 2, but we still have 11 left. As long as we kill that kid, the coordinates won't be leaked, and the Casa civilization will save a massive amount of resources. He definitely won't broadcast the coordinates. The gloomy-faced middle-aged man grabbed the adjutant by the collar and enunciated every word clearly. Listen to me very carefully. If I report that 2 strategic wormholes naturally dissipated, the higher-ups will definitely send someone down to investigate. Then both you and I will be sent to our deaths. You won't escape either. But if all 13 hidden strategic wormholes are destroyed, and then we kill that guy, no one will ever know about this. We won't bear any responsibility. Understand? He tightened his grip. Now, immediately send someone to destroy the remaining 11 wormholes. Once it's done, report back to me. I'll go file the report. I won't say it a second time. This is the only way to keep our lives. I don't want to die, and I'm sure you don't want to die either. Besides, the Casa civilization isn't lacking a few wormholes. Not to mention, war is fundamentally impossible right now. Don't you see the Zerg are waging war in the opposite direction? They wouldn't dare provoke Casa. Why, yes. Yes. The adjutant's face twisted as he trembled and sobbed. He accepted it. He had no choice but to accept it. He didn't want to die. It was just, deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that doing this was wrong. Wait. Right then, the middle-aged man suddenly gritted his teeth, his voice hoarse and his face somewhat ferocious. That won't work. It's not realistic enough. Suppose the Zerg secretly sent an army past all our detection to Star System 27. How could they accurately destroy all the hidden strategic wormholes? How would they know the information? Could it be that we leaked it? He rolled his eyes, then immediately patched it up with another script. It has to be a Zerg mothership arriving in secret. A conflict breaks out with our side, and they accidentally hit a few wormholes during the space battle. Then we managed to save a few. That makes sense. Let me see. At this point, he was writing a script like a movie. The more he wrote, the deeper he'd sink into the mud. He tapped rapidly on the star map. Deploy the Casa garrison in Star System 27. Send an emergency intelligence report, Zerg invasion. Then he pointed continuously. This point, and this point. 2 points in a straight line. The Zerg mothership accidentally hits the wormholes while destroying these planets. The Casa garrison in Star System 27 will mobilize and destroy the Datong civilization, the Radiant civilization, the Jiangping civilization, the Chioha civilization. He paused for a moment. The Xuanwu civilization, no, that won't do. This cultivation civilization has a high-ranking leader who loves watching sword flight. We have to preserve it, otherwise, we'll face emotional questioning. Change the angle. Add the Jianren civilization instead. He took a deep breath. A total of 27 level 1 civilizations. Destroy them all. Plunge Star System 27 into the chaos of war. The Casa garrison in Star System 27 valiantly fights the enemy, repelling the Zerg mothership army at the cost of only 17 high-level trains. In the chaos of war, 27 level 1 civilizations are destroyed, and a few hidden strategic wormholes are accidentally destroyed as well. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared at the star map. That makes sense. There are no more loopholes. No more loopholes, only pure evil, and a hole bigger than his mouth. Yes, sir. The adjutant standing beside him completely broke down. The hole is getting bigger and bigger. Can we just stop patching it? Let's just report the truth. The leaders definitely won't hold us accountable. This mess is getting way out of hand. Shut up. The middle-aged man was on the verge of madness, screaming hysterically. I don't fucking want to die. If you understood politics better than me, you wouldn't have been sitting in that adjutant chair for 37 years. I climbed up so fast because I understand politics better than you. He gritted his teeth. Chaos. The more chaotic, the better. Only in chaos can you fish in troubled waters. Otherwise, both you and I are dead. Then he threw out a reassurance. Don't worry, I have a plan. The Casa Civilization Federation has nearly 10,000 level 1 civilizations. Losing 27 of them won't even register to the higher-ups. The leader of the Casa garrison in Star System 27 is my blood brother. As long as the plan is executed with all personnel inside the trains with the windows closed, no one will know exactly what happened. Only you, me, and him will know the truth. But the adjutant went limp and collapsed to the floor, trembling as he spoke. There's no actual combat. Where are we going to get the losses of 17 high-level trains? The middle-aged man turned to look at him, his voice ice cold. I told you, just do as I say. I'll talk to my brother. Once it's done, I'll issue the Zerg invasion warning. You must report it to the higher-ups according to the standard Zerg warning protocol. I'll end the battle within 10 minutes. By that time, the Casa Grand Army won't be able to arrive in time. He spoke in one breath, his eyes bloodshot, his voice growing colder and colder. But the Casa garrison in Star System 27 has a total of 138 high-level trains. Every train captain will know the actual situation. He sneered. Most of the train captains are my brother's trusted aides. They won't spill the secret. As for the 17 train captains who aren't his trusted aides, they will become martyrs along with their own trains. He said it so lightly, but in reality, he had already finalized the sacrifice list. Truly chilling. He slammed his hand on the table. If we do this right, you and I might even get credited for it. Remember this well. The Casa civilization has a massive foundation. A little loss is nothing. But us? We only have one life. Once we're dead for good. Sustainable resources versus non-renewable resources on the scale. Everyone knows which one to pick. Don't make me spell it out for you again. As a soldier, your duty is to obey orders. He tossed out a string of codes. Take my code and prepare to issue the warning. The adjutant still tried to cling to protocol. But according to regulations, officials don't have the authority to mobilize the Casa garrison in Star System 27. You need to report and request authorization. The regulations also state that in the event of an emergency, one can act at their own discretion. Do you want me to lecture you on every single clause? You think I don't know the rules better than you? Go to your job. Don't make me say it twice. Why, yes. The adjutant's legs turned to jelly. He struggled to scramble up from the floor, stumbling toward the back of the space station, his soul practically leaving his body. The middle-aged man watched his retreating back and narrowed his eyes. If everything went smoothly, once the plan was over, this adjutant could also be sent on his way. He sat back in his chair, looking at the star map. The corners of his mouth curled up as he muttered to himself, reviewing the plan to see if there were any loopholes left. He admitted the plan was a bit crazy, but calculating it carefully, the losses weren't that huge. It was well within the Casa civilization's tolerance. That way, no one would investigate those hidden strategic wormholes anymore. As for him, because he worked diligently, discovered the enemy invasion in time, and warned his superiors to minimize losses, he might even be rewarded. He just needed to clean up a few remaining traces, and it would be perfect. Conveniently, he was very experienced in this field, cleaning up messes. Very good. Even if the opening wasn't pretty, everyone knew the ending would be beautiful. Beautiful on paper, at least. As for human lives, well, whatever. Half an hour later. W-yo, 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 W-yo. Ear-piercing sirens shrieked throughout the space station. The man grabbed the glass of iced lemon tea beside him. downed it in one gulp, took a deep breath, and with a ferocious expression, grabbed the communicator and roared. The Zerg Grand Army has broken through the radar blockade and secretly infiltrated Star System 27. He screamed at the top of his lungs. Warning! Warning! Immediately contact the Casa Civilization garrison in Star System 27. Prepare to engage the enemy. At that moment, almost in the blink of an eye, across all planets in Star System 27, inside the trains of the Casa Civilization's ground and space garrisons, deafening sirens blared simultaneously. This was the highest-level Zerg invasion warning. The massive planetary ring ground weapons that Casa had deployed across multiple planets simultaneously rose from the Earth. Giant cannon barrels aimed straight at the sky, just waiting for coordinates to unleash maximum firepower. In an instant, the entirety of Star System 27 and all its civilizations immediately entered a Level 1 state of alert. Countless high-tier trains, large-scale ground weapons, and military shielding devices that were nowhere to be seen on normal days all activated at once. Radars, communications, and all civilian wormholes for private trains were instantly locked down. War had officially begun. The objective: repel the Zerg invasion. A false alarm that triggered a full-blown doomsday mode. It truly shook everything from top to bottom. At the stadium in Zhongzhou City, planet Xuanwu, the Triennial Alchemist Convention was in full swing. The stands were packed, without a single empty seat. At this moment, all the alchemists had been introduced and were preparing to enter the first round of the competition to eliminate participants before moving forward. But right at that moment, WO, 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 ear-piercing sirens echoed throughout the stadium. No, not just the stadium. They echoed throughout the entirety of Zhongzhou City. All the red indicator lights in the city flashed incessantly. In a split second, all the city's light sources shifted to red and green. A continuous string of green lights formed veins running throughout the city. These were the paths leading to the bomb shelters. The spectators in the stands all changed color and used every method at their disposal to rush out of the stadium without looking back. Some flew on their swords, some piloted mechas, and others just put their heads down and sprinted toward the exits at top speed. This was the highest-level warning, only sounded during a Zerg invasion. Everyone knew that Star System 27 was located at the extreme western edge of the Casa Federation, making it the closest to the Zerg. Once the two sides went to war, this star system would be the first area to get hit. But war hadn't broken out in so many years, so the initial anxiety had gradually turned into apathy. Until today, when the sirens dragged everyone back to reality. It was exactly like that. Peace for so long that they thought the alarms were just for decoration. Hundreds of years were enough to soothe many things, but today was different. The Zerg civilization had truly arrived. The alchemists and the host on stage no longer had the energy to care about the Triennial Alchemist Convention. Everyone scrambled madly for the exits. The bomb shelters were only the final line of defense. If the planet was just affected, hiding down there might give you a chance to survive. But once a top-tier war broke out, hundreds of planets could be blown up at the drop of a hat. Hiding in a shelter was just a dead end. In the face of this level of warfare, hiding anywhere was useless. Individual strength was practically zero. This was the power of civilizations, two great civilizations smashing directly into each other. Normally, cultivating immortals looked badass, but when planets started blowing up, all you could do was run for your life. Chun Meng looked grimly at Zheng Qiudao, who had just run back with the young alchemist from the venomous snake sect. Without a word, he immediately led the few of them through the refrigerator next to them to return to the Starlight freighter parked outside the city, leaving the fridge right where it was. He hadn't expected the war to break out so quickly, and honestly, he didn't want a war to break out at all. He hadn't fully matured yet. The Starlight freighter was still weak, and he hadn't gathered enough resources. Relying solely on level 100 armor was fundamentally incapable of turning the tide of this war. Even surviving in the vortex of war would be difficult. In the control room of the Starlight freighter, Chun Meng looked at the star map. He didn't see any signs of a Zerg invasion. That was normal, as the map only showed planetary distribution, not troop movements. He switched to the enemy detection radar screen and frowned. Nothing. His enemy detection radar was level 200, with a detection range of up to 0.15 light-years. Right now, within that range, it only showed Qasim military ships rapidly assembling. There was no trace of the Zerg army, at least not within 0.15 light-years. If a level 200 radar couldn't spot them, he didn't believe the Zerg could completely evade it. That meant the Zerg army probably hadn't even entered Star System 27 yet. This warning. Is it an early warning? We're leaving immediately. Chen Meng didn't hesitate. After confirming with Xiao AI that everyone was on board and no one was left behind, he immediately prepared to push the control stick and leave planet Xuanwu. There was no time to linger. Star System 27 was about to plunge into a sea of fire. This place would turn into a meat grinder, and who knew how many planets would be shattered because of it. But right at that moment, several blinding beams of light suddenly appeared in the clear sky, striking fear into everyone's souls. If it were peacetime, Chen Meng might have stopped to admire it because the sight was truly beautiful. But now, only one thought crossed his mind. It's over. It's really over. Before he could even catch a glimpse of the Zerg on the radar, the war had erupted, almost in an instant. Those beams of light were countless arcano-energy cannons and other devastating space-tier firepower erupting simultaneously. The enemy detection radar clearly showed that the attack intensity of each beam was level 101, just enough to breach the Starlight Freighter's armor defenses. Each beam burned hundreds of billions in resources, yet right now, they were firing across the sky as if they were free. So rich they burn money for fireworks. That's Casa for you. At the same time, public loudspeakers in Zhengzhou City, the parking lots, and everywhere else blared a massive announcement. Level 1 combat alert. Any ship that leaves the planet without authorization and enters space will be classified as a hostile target. Chen Meng's expression changed. Back to the venomous snake sect. He quickly used the remaining resources on the ship to upgrade the armor to level 102. Just a 2-level increase nearly drained his substantial iron or reserves dry. With this armor, they could basically withstand one direct hit. But for now, they still couldn't escape into space. Because once attack levels exceeded 100, they were calculated in energy bands. Even if level 102 armor could take one photon cannon blast, it couldn't survive several in a row. First, he had to pick up the disciples of the venomous snake sect, because they were working for him. He couldn't just stand by and watch their people die here. Initially, he also wanted to take young Master Li and the others, but he couldn't reach them now, so he had to leave them to fate. The Starlight Freighter blasted off at full speed, arriving at the venomous snake sect in minutes. Many disciples were already waiting. The moment the ship's doors opened, they all rushed inside like madmen, faces filled with terror. Chen Meng sat in the control room, his expression unreadable as he stared at the star map. There was no sound. But on the map, the names of several planets had disappeared. That meant planets had already blown up. This was planet-destroying warfare. Staying on planet Xuanwu wasn't safe either. Once the planet exploded, the ship would definitely be caught in the blast. Chen Meng had to escape planet Xuanwu immediately. No matter how the Casa civilization blockaded it, he had to run right now. Without hesitation, the level 200 radar shielding device was activated at maximum capacity. Immediately after, he slammed the control stick forward. The ship instantly tilted at a sharp angle and violently shot upward, like a mechanical dragon piercing the sky, tearing through the atmosphere and blasting into space. As soon as he reached space, he witnessed a breathtakingly shocking scene. Countless planetary fragments were expanding outward at speeds of thousands of kilometers per second. It was as if a giant shotgun had just fired point-blank into Star System 27. If these fragments crashed into other planets, it would cause global catastrophes, like the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs, but with a much higher frequency. Boom, boom, boom. Countless debris slammed into the ship's hull at terrifying speeds. Chen Meng's face darkened. He yanked the control stick, pushing the speed to the absolute max, tearing through the sea of debris and diving headfirst deep into space. Relying on the level 200 radar shielding and level 200 enemy detection radar, he was practically invisible on the battlefield. As long as he didn't get close enough to be seen by the naked eye, he could quietly slip away without anyone noticing. Right at that moment, the ship was suddenly forced into an emergency brake, its speed plummeting drastically. The violent jolt made Chun Mang's chest tighten uncomfortably, even with the integrated spatial stabilizer. Before he could even figure out what was happening, boom. A beam of light shot over from afar, grazing the bow of the ship before plunging deep into space. Only then did the screen flash a warning. Incoming hostile fire detected. Estimated impact in 0.00000001 seconds. Attack intensity, level 101. Recommended action, evade. Chun Mang breathed a sigh of relief, immediately pushed the control stick to keep running, and just said softly, "Xiao AI. Thank you." That was Xiao AI forcibly taking over and slamming the brakes to dodge. The Arcano energy cannon was a light beam traveling at near light speed. Warnings were practically useless. One beat too slow, and you were dead. 3 hours later, he piloted the Starlight freighter at top speed to a relatively peripheral location in Star System 27. The dense dust and rubble became a perfect shield, making him incredibly inconspicuous in space. Almost no one would spare him a glance. He didn't dare delay, continuously pushing the control stick. His mind finally caught up to reality. The Zerg hadn't invaded at all. The enemy detection radar clearly showed that those attacks were all fired by Casa civilization ships. Those planets were destroyed by Casa itself. Has the Casa civilization gone mad? He knew Casa had destroyed quite a few civilizations before, but at least there was a reason. What reason was there to wipe out these level 1 civilizations in Star System 27? What the hell is Casa trying to do? Especially since a war of this scale burns through an unimaginable amount of resources. A level 50 Arcano energy cannon only requires 5 billion units of iron ore. With a super consumption having effect, it's down to 2.5 billion. But level 101 costs hundreds of billions, because its power is enough to blow up a planet. A few shots and a planet explodes. Firing like this is literally burning through mines without blinking. Normal people count bullets when they shoot. Casa counts budgets when they fire cannons. Chun Mang slumped into his chair, his face grim as he watched what was unfolding on the radar. He survived, but his plans were shattered. His plan to build an interest group to earn massive resources was completely smashed to pieces. He had prepared so much, thinking it was almost time to harvest, only to lose everything. The resources left on the ship right now were barely anything, and there were no mineral planets around. If Star System 27 was completely annihilated, his only option would be to wander the universe and rely on cyber mines to scavenge trace amounts of iron ore every day. He just couldn't understand what the fuck Casa was trying to do. At the same time, the middle-aged man in the space station was also screaming into his communicator, his face ferocious. "Are you fucking crazy? What the hell are you trying to do? What did the plan I gave you say? I said destroying 27 planets was enough." He gritted his teeth. "What the fuck are you doing? Do you really need to fire that many main cannons just to destroy 27 planets?" On the other end of the line was the commander of the Casa civilization garrison in Star System 27, his own flesh and blood, his half-brother. It's just that once a plan is in motion, it's very hard to control. Even his own brother wasn't listening to him anymore. On a high-tier Casa civilization ship, a man in military uniform pulled the communicator away from his ear, stretched lazily, and said nonchalantly, "Don't rush, little brother. The military has its own procedures. Once war is declared, there's no such thing as holding back. We have to launch a saturation attack. I know what I'm doing." With that, he hung up, lit a cigarette, and propped his feet up on the control console. He watched the continuous bursts of fireworks in space and grinned widely. So beautiful. I can almost hear the wails of billions of lives. Of course, he knew why his younger brother did this. It was to destroy those hidden strategic wormholes to cover up his own screw-up at work. But the reason he agreed so readily wasn't because of blood ties, of course. It was because he also wanted to clear his own debts. Star System 27 was closest to the Zerg civilization. Once the two sides went to war, this would be the earliest and largest combat zone. Therefore, the daily strategic resource reserves here were vastly greater than in other star systems. With so many reserves and no war breaking out, who could resist staring at such a massive fortune every single day? At least, he couldn't. Skimming a little today, skimming a little tomorrow. His private coffers swelled. But the more he took, the more uneasy he felt. It seemed he had taken a bit too much. With so many resources missing, using military exercise consumption as an excuse was a hard sell. Because exercises didn't involve firing live ammunition at maximum intensity. They couldn't possibly burn through that many resources. Just when he was getting a headache over it, his good little brother handed him the perfect excuse. All it took was a war to wipe the slate clean. He could just write off the resources as war consumption. All he had to do was pad the numbers on how many times the main cannons were fired. Not only did it clear his debts, but he could also conveniently pocket a little extra on the side. The man glanced at the adjutant beside him and smiled meaningfully. Don't worry, everyone gets a cut. Follow me, and you'll always have meat to eat. As for those 17 stubborn fools, it's time to send them on their way. You are wise, Commander. The adjutant stood up straight and saluted excitedly, his eyes shining brightly, clearly dreaming of his share. The war only lasted 10 minutes. The frantic bombardment of light beams finally stopped. No one knew how many shots were fired, but the shock waves from the battle had already spread to all the remaining planets. On planet Xuanwu, countless golden core and even nascent soul experts who had been cultivating in secret burst out of their cave dwellings with ferocious expressions, popping up like bamboo shoots after a spring rain. They hovered in the air, desperately attacking the fragments raining down from space like a storm. The true foundation of the cultivation world was fully exposed at this moment. If another civilization saw this scene, they would be astounded that planet Xuanwu had so many nascent soul experts. High-speed fragments were blown up mid-air, turning into fine powder, but countless others still smashed directly into the ground. Deafening explosions echoed continuously like the earth itself was turning over. The ground shook violently, mountains collapsed, and countless villages and cities were reduced to a living hell. Even though countless experts hung in the sky, defending until they were exhausted, they could only destroy the smaller fragments. Soon, many ran out of spiritual qi, were struck by the fragments, and instantly vaporized, disappearing on the spot. Those blazing fragments were like a level 10 forbidden spell, cleansing the entire planet. Right at this moment, from the 8 corners of planet Xuanwu, 8 pillars of light in 8 different colors suddenly surged upward. The 8 pillars of light shot into the sky and rapidly expanded outward, eventually merging into a barrier of light that enveloped the entire planet. Meteorites smashing into the light barrier instantly turned to dust. Those fragments, traveling at thousands of kilometers per second, couldn't pierce through that seemingly fragile veil. Tianji Pavilion, planet Xuanwu. The pavilion master of Tianji Pavilion knelt on the ground, looking toward an old man sitting cross-legged on the back mountain, blood and tears streaming down his face. He clenched his fists tightly and roared, grinding out every word through his teeth. If this debt of blood is not repaid, I am not human. A blinding crimson pillar of light erupted from the old man's body and merged into the light barrier in the sky. Every sect had its own hidden foundation. The 5 great sects and the 3 great families. Each had a soul formation expert holding down the fort. Tianji Pavilion was naturally no exception. Over 100 years ago, the 8 great factions originally stationed in Zhongzhou had relocated to remote areas. Outsiders guessed all sorts of reasons, avoiding the chaos of Zhongzhou City, discovering spirit stone veins, or finding temporal rifts. But only they knew that those 8 locations perfectly covered the entirety of planet Xuanwu. Once planet Xuanwu was attacked by the Kasa civilization, the soul formation experts of the 8 great factions would activate the heaven-protecting Grand Array at the cost of their own lives, to withstand external attacks for a short period of time. The price was the lives of 8 soul formation experts. In the past, these 8 factions with millennia of heritage had deep-seated grudges and bitter feuds that were completely irreconcilable. But ever since Kasa appeared, they all swallowed their pride, laying out all sorts of schemes just so planet Xuanwu could survive. Faced with an overwhelmingly powerful external enemy, internal conflicts were set aside. Even if they had to die, they would die at the hands of the enemy, not at the hands of their own kind. Therefore, on normal days, the soul formation experts of the 8 great factions almost never left their territories, fearing that in a special situation, they wouldn't be able to activate the heaven-protecting Grand Array in time. To put it bluntly, this was a pre-installed suicide button to save the entire planet. When the time came to press it, no one wanted to, but they still had to. Soul formation experts could already rely on their physical bodies to travel through space. All 8 patriarchs had a chance to survive. But if even one of them chose to flee, the heaven-protecting Grand Array couldn't be formed. Yet, they all chose to die calmly. Lives are meant to be spent. As long as they were spent on something worthwhile, it wasn't a meaningless death. The old man sitting cross-legged on the back mountain looked extremely weak, yet at this moment, violent spiritual chi surged wildly from him. He slowly opened his eyes, a trace of reluctance to leave this world flashing through his cloudy gaze. He looked at the Tianji Pavilion master kneeling before him and said slowly, "I have spirit wandered to check on the person you mentioned. He is very good." When he left, he even took the disciples of the venomous snake sect with him. To not abandon the venomous snake sect disciples in such a dangerous moment. This kid values relationships deeply. For us, it's an advantage. But if he wants to survive in the universe, it's his biggest flaw. But such is life. If planet Xuanwu still has a future, bet it all on him. We don't have much time left. We no longer have thousands of years to slowly lay out our plans. If the heaven-protecting Grand Array fails to block all the meteor fragments, the mortal realm will suffer countless casualties and planet Xuanwu will perish. If that happens, take the orphans we've secretly raised all these years, go find him, and join his ship. Right at this moment, a mouthful of fresh blood violently sprayed from the old man's mouth. The surrounding spiritual chi trembled, causing the pillar of light above his head to sway unsteadily. He squeezed his eyes shut, forcibly stabilized his aura, and without another word, poured all his focus into maintaining the Grand Array. "Father!" The Tianji Pavilion master knelt on the ground, his eyes red, his voice trembling so much he choked. He really wanted to selfishly say, "We have a minor world. The entire sect can just hide inside it. Father, take the minor world, and we can all hide deep in space together. We won't die for now. If the masses die, let them die. Why should we care?" But he knew he couldn't say it, and he didn't dare to say it. His father always cared for the masses. As for him, all he knew was that from now on, he no longer had a father. He didn't know how much time had passed, but the noise in his ears gradually quieted down. When he raised his head, his father's figure was gone. Only a skeleton remained in its place, with faint blue sparks still flickering on the bones. The masses lived. His father died. Was it really worth it? 3 days later, the Starlight Freighter returned to Star System 27 and once again entered planet Xuanwu. This time, there were no inspections whatsoever. Zhongzhou City was still intact. If it weren't for a few leftover meteorites lying in deep craters outside the city, it would seem as if nothing had ever happened. Zhongzhou City's energy shield had blocked the initial impact of the meteor fragments. Chen Meng walked expressionlessly down the streets of Zhongzhou City. He was back, but this time, he would gather resources much more efficiently than before, because he couldn't stand having his life completely thrown into the hands of others. Especially when he clearly hadn't done anything, yet still had to bear a disaster falling from the sky. After that battle, Star System 27 was left in ruins everywhere. Casa Daily. 3 days ago, the Zerg civilization army secretly invaded Star System 27, destroying 29 planets and causing catastrophic devastation. However, the Casa civilization garrison in Star System 27, under the leadership of Commander Zhang Xiaoping, engaged the enemy in a timely manner. They successfully annihilated all enemy forces, ensuring the safety of the remaining planets. All of this is also thanks to the timely warning from Zhang Kading, chief of the Casa Civilization Strategic Space Station, which helped minimize the damage. Following is an interview with these two heroes. Chen Meng stood on the street, expressionlessly watching today's news pop up on his wristwatch. The main headline read, "Good news." The subheadings were, "The whistleblower, Zhang Kading, and the sword-bearer, Zhang Xiaoping." He looked up at the grief-stricken pedestrians, then looked down at the words "good news." He only felt a chilling sense of irony. This kind of good news, It was pretty obvious who it was actually good for. The whistleblower. The sword-bearer. There was absolutely no Zerg civilization invasion. It was all just a play directed and acted out by the Casa civilization itself. The Casa civilization truly had methods. After the war ended, the massive amount of dust formed dust clouds in space. If left unaddressed, they could last for millions of years, forcing all planets in the star system to face an ice age. The gravitational forces in the star system were also destroyed by the explosion of dozens of planets. One planet closest to the star, due to the destruction of gravity, plunged straight into the star. A civilization just disappeared without a sound. He didn't even know the name of that civilization. He didn't know what their culture was like or how strong their military was. He only knew they vanished as lightly as a speck of dust, yet as heavily as the entire sky. As for some planets further from the star, their orbits were widened. As if thrown straight out by a galactic catapult, they began their own interstellar wandering. The intersecting orbits of the remaining planets also increased the risk of collision at any moment to a point. We're just hearing about it gave you goosebumps. The violent fluctuations in tidal forces caused by the chaotic gravity triggered super earthquakes and tsunamis that swept across the surviving planets. The casualties were too numerous to count. If no one intervened, that would be the real disaster. In the entire star system 27, no one would survive. But the Casa civilization really knew what they were doing. Right after the war ended, they cleared all the dust clouds in the star system and restored the gravitational forces. Except for the planet that had plunged into the star and couldn't be saved, the gravity of the other planets was restored, including the one that had been flung away by the galactic catapult. Star System 27 seemed to return to normal. Dozens of planets continued to orbit the star. Only the number had decreased significantly. And all of this, the deaths of nearly 1 trillion lives, was ultimately compressed on the news into just 2 words: good news. This kind of good news, whoever wrote that headline must have had ice in their veins. Chen Meng stood on the streets of Zhongzhou City, silent for a very long time. He always thought he wasn't a good person. He had robbed resources from quite a few people. From very early on, he had forced many people to work for him long-term. He felt his moral baseline was very low. He used to believe there were no purely evil people in the world. Everyone did things based on their own stance. In your eyes, they might be evil, but from their perspective, they might be terrifyingly right. But now, he felt that thought was probably wrong. There really were purely evil people in this world. Purely evil people who deserved to die. The Casa civilization deserved to die even more than the Zerg civilization. At least the Zerg were straightforward. Their goal was to plunder resources. But Casa destroyed things for no reason, and after destroying them, packaged it as good news. It was literally beating people up and then forcing them to clap. Right at this moment, as if sensing something, he looked up ahead. He saw young Master Li leading his entourage, standing there in a daze. The last time they met, this young Master Li of the Datong civilization had grandly declared he wanted to turn the Datong civilization into a tourist resort. But this time, his back wasn't as straight as before. His eyes were red, and he stood on the street looking completely hollowed out, staring toward Chen Meng. The entourage behind him was still wearing the blazing sun brand, but they were also dazed and bewildered, as if someone had drained their souls. A moment later, massive tears rolled down from the corners of young Master Li's eyes. He collapsed limply, his body twitching slightly like a dying dog. His face pressed against the dirt as he trembled and whispered, "It's gone. It's all gone." Chen Meng stayed silent for a moment, then walked over, crouched down, and gently patted young Master Li's shoulder. He didn't know how to comfort others. That had never been his strong suit. In the news broadcast just now, among the 28 planets destroyed this time, 3 belonged to the Choha civilization and the Datong civilization. That's right, the Datong civilization had a total of 2 planets. One was their home planet for living, and the other was entirely planted with scallions. Both had blown up. The Datong civilization was annihilated. He had seen civilizations destroyed by the Zerg on the star map before, but he had never intuitively felt such terrifying destruction like this, especially the Choha civilization, which he had just left. The new leader of the Choha civilization had planned to strike hard, wipe out the parasites, and elevate the civilization to new heights. He was right in the middle of confronting the Jiang family. Yet disaster struck. Planet Shoha blew up, and everyone on it vaporized in the exact same instant. Conflicts that had lasted for years were wiped clean in a single second. From now on, there would be no more conflict between the Shoha civilization's leader and the Jiang family. Everyone was finally living in peace, blended into one. No need to distinguish between you and me anymore. A long time later, Chen Meng finally said softly, "Follow me from now on. I'll take you to get revenge." As soon as he said that, young Master Li, who had been trying to hold it together, finally couldn't take it anymore. He threw himself into Chen Meng's arms and wailed miserably. "I was planning to buy a tourism company to develop the Datong civilization's tourism industry, so my father would look at me differently. But I was clearly about to succeed. I was about to get praised by my father. I waited so long for this. Why? Why did the war break out without any warning? Why wasn't it the cultivation civilization that blew up, but the Datong civilization? Why?" Chen Meng didn't say anything, just continued to pat his shoulder. He didn't have a father. He had never received a father's praise. But he always believed one thing. When a man desperately craves someone's validation, he often makes a lot of wrong decisions because of it. People often say a man spends his whole life striving for recognition, but he didn't like that kind of life. He didn't know what having a father felt like. Maybe it was being able to hug your father and cry after a failure. He had never experienced it. It sounded both naive and luxurious. 10 minutes later, Chen Meng continued walking down the street. He lit 2 cigarettes, put one in his mouth, handed the other to Zhu Xin beside him, patted his shoulder, and said softly, "My condolences." Beside him were the president of the Yizhao Merchant Guild, Qiu Yizhao, and the general manager of Sanshui City Port, Zhu Shun. Both of them were from the Chioha civilization. And 3 days ago, the Chioha civilization had blown up. Even though their families had been brought aboard the Starlight freighter early on to escape the disaster, the sudden destruction of an entire civilization still plunged them into a state of grief for the past few days, especially when the whole city was shrouded in mourning. That atmosphere spread to him, affecting Chen Meng to some extent as well. "Thank you, Lord Meng." Zhu Shun forced a smile, trembling as he took the cigarette, and said hoarsely, "I still have to thank you, Lord Meng, for bringing my family onto the ship to escape this disaster. I just didn't expect the final outcome to turn out like this." Up until the civilization's destruction, the new leader of the Chioha civilization and the Jiang family hadn't even had the chance to truly clash. But the Jiang family didn't need to worry about paying off their debts anymore. Now the debts were wiped clean in the literal sense that there was no one left to collect them. Qiu Yizhao stood beside him, his voice hoarse with despair. "Lord Meng, I really want to hate the Zerg civilization. But the gap is too massive. I don't even have the right to hate them. It's like we just got hit by a natural disaster." Qiu Yizhao paused for a moment, then asked, "Are the Zerg civilization and the Kasa civilization officially going to war?" "Not in the short term." Chen Meng patted Qiu Yizhao's shoulder lightly again. Right now, he was no different from someone handing out tranquilizers. Everyone needed a word to cling to. Too many people had died. This wasn't just a city in mourning anymore. It was an entire star system in mourning. Of course, they wouldn't go to war, because the Zerg civilization hadn't invaded at all. It was all just a play directed and acted out by the Kasa civilization. It's just that Chen Meng still didn't understand why they did it. He didn't tell Zhu Shun and the others this truth, because the people at the bottom still thought the ones who destroyed their civilization were the Zerg, not Kasa. And moving forward, he still had to gather resources within the Kasa Civilization Federation to develop rapidly. If the people under him showed too much hatred toward Kasa, it would be very easy for mistakes to happen. When that time came, he would be the one suffering the losses. It was enough that he knew. There was no need to drag the whole crew down into the pit with him just yet. The whole city was in mourning. Every citizen of Zhongzhou City was busy. Chen Meng just kept walking down the street. He wasn't even sure what they were busy with. Not many people were crying. Not many even openly showed their grief. But the entire city was shrouded in an atmosphere so heavy it was suffocating. It was as if everyone was bracing themselves just to keep from collapsing. Right at this moment, a dull thud echoed from behind. Chen Meng and the others turned to look, only to see a twisted body lying in a pool of blood. It was obvious they had jumped from the roof of the high-rise building behind them. The people around just took one look, then lowered their heads and continued with their business, chillingly calm, as if this was just another chore to deal with today. Should we save him? Xiao Ai, walking behind, asked softly. He still has a breath left. No need. Chen Meng paused for a moment, then shook his head. Just let him go in peace. His finger twitched slightly. A piece of scrap iron on the ground instantly shot straight into the man's head at extreme speed. This was the second person he had killed with his own hands. A stranger seeking death. He just helped make it quick. It sounds gruesome, but in this Morning Star system, making it quick had become a kind of mercy. Life truly is ironic. When the civilization behind you is destroyed, you become a civilization-less wanderer, drifting like a fallen leaf in the universe, not knowing where home is. The reason Chen Meng didn't feel that way was partly because his mentality was tough enough, and partly because his familiar Starlight freighter was right there. It was just that he hadn't rebuilt a civilization yet, but he didn't consider himself homeless. He still had a home. His home was on the ship, in the control room. Though it wasn't large, everything around it was familiar. That place was home. It's okay. Shi Kishio, who was following the group, the young man in charge of component R&D, was currently running back and forth in the group with his little sister, constantly comforting Zhu Shen. Young Masterly, everyone, I used to be a civilization-less wanderer too. It was only after joining the Starlight freighter that I felt like I had a home. Lord Meng is a very good person. From now on, just treat this as your home. We'll work hard together. Work hard so that one day, we can go find the Zerg civilization and get our revenge. The two siblings had very strong empathy to begin with, and having experienced the destruction of their own civilization, their own eyes grew red as they spoke. Wah! The little sister, who usually handed out candy to everyone, suddenly felt aggrieved and threw herself into Chi Kashio's arms, sniffling as she said, "Brother, I miss father." Not long after, Chen Meng ran into the old man from the Jimei tourism group on the street again. This universe was truly meaninglessly vast. Blowing up dozens of planets was no different from a speck of dust to it. Yet it was strangely small. Even with no connection, they could still bump into each other right in the middle of Zhongzhou City. Lord Meng. Recognizing Chen Meng, the old man's eyes reddened. He took a deep breath, suppressed his emotions, and forced a smile. We meet again. Yeah. Chen Meng looked at his expression, paused for a moment, and asked, which civilization are you from? The Jiangping civilization. The Jiangping civilization. Chen Meng muttered it to himself. He remembered that good news broadcast mentioning this civilization. It was also one of the civilizations destroyed this time. He just said softly, my condolences, offering a word of comfort before asking, where is your Miss Chi? She jumped off a building. A flash of grief crossed the old man's eyes, his voice turning hoarse. She couldn't handle the fact that all her friends, her family, including her clansmen and her home planet, were all destroyed. I just looked away for a second, and she jumped off the high-rise building, died on the spot. Before she left, she handed over the captain's authority to me. Even though he and the young miss were always at odds, almost flipping the table on each other, to be fair, he still cared. After all, he watched her grow up. She was like a daughter to him. He just wanted to make the company the old master left behind better. Before handing over the captain's authority, she even told him that despite all the unpleasant things that happened these past few days, in her heart, he would always be Uncle Wong. The same Uncle Wong who used to push her on the swings when she was little. She didn't understand why the adult world was so full of betrayal and conflict. Why couldn't everyone just get along peacefully? But she still really liked Uncle Wong. The adult world was so hateful. She didn't like it. She only liked the days when she was young, when her father was still alive, and everyone played together in harmony. If only time could turn back. She hoped that in the future, Uncle Wong could make the company grow more and more prosperous. She no longer had the strength to seek revenge against the Philia pirate group. She wanted to go on ahead. Chen Meng looked at the old man in front of him, a man who was clearly very old but still tried to stand straight, forcing a smile. He stayed silent for a long time before softly saying, my condolences. He had said that phrase countless times today, to the point where even he was sick of it. But other than that, sometimes people have nothing else to offer to another's pain. Follow me from now on. We can't just wallow in grief forever. We have to make our enemies taste that same sorrow. The old man smiled bitterly. It's just, our plan has probably fallen apart. With so many civilizations destroyed, the clients for my travel agency have all scattered. For a long time to come, I'm afraid no one will be in the mood to travel. And that onion civilization we plan to develop. Yeah, Chen Meng nodded calmly. We'll talk about that later. Let me take you all somewhere first. After saying that, he didn't speak further. He just leaned on his bamboo cane and walked straight down the street, heading directly for the stadium. The old man wasn't wrong. His plans had indeed been shattered. Both the travel agency and the marrow-cleansing pill plans were ruined. All the hard work and setup destroyed by a single unprovoked strike from the Casa civilization. Everything went down the drain. For the first time, he understood what it felt like to be hit with a devastating blow right in the face, like getting slapped by life before you even had a chance to do anything. He didn't like this feeling, and he thought he should change something. 10 minutes later, Chun Mang led the group to the stadium. The Triennial Alchemist Grand Convention had long been suspended. The ground was littered with trash, and no one lingered. In the middle of the spectator seats, a refrigerator stood all alone. From afar, it looked a bit darkly comical. The whole star system was in mourning, yet it just sat there, quietly, as if it had never been part of this tragedy. This was what they had left here when they exited the stadium. The train's iron ore balance was currently less than a few tens of millions. He couldn't craft another level 200 refrigerator anytime soon, so he had to retrieve this one. This was also a main reason he came to Zhongzhou City. Being rich was one thing, but going bankrupt could happen in the blink of an eye. Running into a cosmic-level war, resources were simply never enough. The trillions of iron ore he had stockpiled were only enough to upgrade the armor by 2 levels, from level 100 to level 102. He hadn't even had the chance to fire a shot. If he did fire, the consumption would be even more terrifying. Right at that moment, an old, tired voice suddenly echoed in his ear. Chen Meng. Chen Meng turned his head and saw a white-haired old man leaning on a dragon-headed cane, followed by 7 people walking briskly toward him. He looked at the dragon-headed cane in the old man's hand, then at the hell cane in his own, and said softly, "You know me?" The old man approached, carefully sizing Chun Meng up and down before saying in a hoarse voice, "To keep it short, I am the pavilion master of Tianji Pavilion. The 7 people behind me are the remaining sect leaders of the 5 great sects and the heads of the 3 great families of Xuanwu Planet. The 8 of us are currently the highest authorities on Xuanwu Planet. We haven't observed you for long, but you perfectly meet the final selection criteria for Project Heavenly Revelation. I will use the shortest amount of time to tell you what Project Heavenly Revelation is." Hearing the old man state his identity, Zhang Qiudao and the former sect master of the Poisonous Snake sect, who were following Chen Meng, felt their pupils shrink violently. These were all illustrious figures in the cultivation world. They never thought there would come a day when they'd meet such people, let alone all 8 of them at once. "I understand." Chen Meng subconsciously tapped the head of his cane, his voice calm. "Your cultivation civilization is suffering because it can't break through to a higher tier, so you devised Project Heavenly Revelation. Gathering all the resources of the cultivation world from the past 100 years, preparing to pour it all into one train so it can break through to a new height, thereby helping the cultivation civilization escape the control of the Casa civilization." "Exactly," the Tianji Pavilion Master said slowly. "You're smart. It makes talking very easy. But because the plan was made on short notice, we haven't accumulated too many Murphy stones and resources yet, so it's a bit different from our original expectations. However, your personal potential is already very strong. We unanimously agree that even without the resources from the Xuanwu civilization, you can still reach a certain height." The Tianji Pavilion Master spoke slowly, his voice hoarse but firm. "Therefore, you can consider this an angel investment. It's not much, not enough to push you to the absolute peak, but it can at least shorten the time it takes for you to get there." Chen Meng asked calmly and directly, "What's the amount?" 1,792 Murphy stones. 5.1 trillion units of iron ore. 3.1 trillion units of copper ore. Wood, titanium crystal, or crimson rock, and the rest aren't in large quantities. "Indeed, not much." Chen Meng nodded slightly. 1,792 Murphy stones really wasn't much. When upgrading all train accessories from level 1 to level 100, the Murphy stone consumption was fixed at 1 stone per level. Reaching level 100 didn't cost much. But after level 100, the price of Murphy stones would skyrocket to an absurd degree. Take the spatial portal for example. Upgrading it to level 200 required 14,580 Murphy stones. And to reach level 500, it needed 224,550 stones. Over 200,000 stones. It was the kind of number that made you want to just shut up after hearing it. Moreover, the spatial portal was only a gold tier accessory. The higher the tier, the more Murphy stones it devoured like gold after level 100. Because of this, the main cannons of the Casa civilization's military were basically only at level 101, just enough to create a qualitative difference from level 100. And it consumed the least amount of Murphy stones. Any higher, and even they couldn't afford to burn through them. But even though there weren't many Murphy stones, the amount of resources was enough to make someone tremble. 5.1 trillion units of iron ore. Chen Mang was very tempted. This was equivalent to him mining several number 1 mining planets. Plus the iron ore on the dark side of the number 1 mining planet that was currently being urgently extracted. Give it a bit more time, and once the dark side was fully mined, he could rake in another trillion units of iron ore. This batch of resources was like a lifesaver for the current Starfarer train. He needed it badly. With this iron ore, he could upgrade the train to a whole new level, which meant he could accomplish a lot of things. So what do you want? Chen Mang asked directly. Such a massive fortune, the century-old foundation of a cultivation civilization. There was no way they'd just toss it to him without conditions. But as long as the price wasn't too outrageous, he could accept it. Just one request. The Tianji Pavilion Master looked at Chen Mang, enunciating every word. First, these resources will not be handed over to you all at once, but divided into 8 portions. You need to marry 1 woman from each of our 8 factions. 8 women in total. The old man paused before adding. As if afraid he might misunderstand, he clarified, they are all carefully cultivated fairies, proficient in the zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. You won't be shortchanged. Every time you and one of these women have a child, we will give you 1 portion of the resources. 8 portions in total. Before Chen Mang could speak, the Tianji Pavilion Master hurriedly explained further. I hope you understand. This is the entire century-old foundation of the Xuanwu civilization. It's also a gamble on the future. We can't guarantee that after you rise to power, you won't burn the bridge after crossing it or abandon us. There needs to be some binding tie between us. Out of these 8 children, 7 can join your civilization, but just 1 joining the Xuanwu civilization is enough. This is trillions in resources. You're not losing out at all. Finally, as if afraid Chen Mang would refuse, the old man tried to add another sentence. But as soon as he spoke, he seemed to regret it, realizing that talking like this was basically admitting they had too much of an advantage. Chen Mang calmly looked at the 8 people in front of him. He stayed silent for a long time before saying softly, "Let's go. I'll take you somewhere." After saying that, he turned and walked toward the refrigerator. Biaozi and the others immediately followed. The Tianji Pavilion Master and the rest exchanged glances, then followed suit. The next moment, when they pushed open the refrigerator door and stepped out, they were already standing inside the control cabin of the Starfarer train. The Tianji Pavilion Master's pupils shrank slightly, because he hadn't felt any spatial fluctuations at all. There was no sensation of passing through a wormhole either, yet they had suddenly teleported to another place. What kind of method was this? He had traveled to many other civilizations, but he had never seen a train captain who could change maps just by opening a fridge. Do you see that thing? Chen Mang leaned on his cane in the control cabin, casually introducing it as he pointed. Special item, galaxy map. In the entire Casa Civilization Federation, not many people have one. It can track the real-time movements of planets and civilizations within a 100,000 light-year radius. That one over there is the screen for the enemy hunting radar. It can monitor all living creatures and trains within a 0.1 light-year radius in real time. It's great to use once upgraded to level 200. That radar jammer over there is also level 200. That single bed is level 200. The refrigerator you just saw is also level 200. Who in their right mind has level 200 stuff on their train? That little green thing sleeping on the bed is a level 100 star behemoth. S-rank potential, a star-devouring beast. It's not fully mature yet, but when it is, its combat form will span 0.1 light years, and it feeds on planets. Even in its current state, it could wipe out a level 1 civilization as easily as flipping its hand. Talking about this and still calling it an angel investment made sense. An angel holding a knife, that is. Forcing someone to have kids for installment payments? Who wouldn't be speechless hearing that? The Tianji Pavilion Master and the others looked at every sight in the control cabin, the horror in their eyes growing heavier by the second. Although they were cultivators, they understood trains very well. They knew exactly what a level 200 accessory meant, a level that was almost impossible to reach. Almost no level 1 train possessed a level 200 accessory, because that thing didn't just require a massive amount of Murphy stones. It also required a terrifying amount of resources, enough to make anyone suffocate just hearing about it. Even advanced civilizations wouldn't want to throw Murphy stones at useless things like a single bed or a refrigerator. Yet here, even the bed he slept on every day was level 200. The value of that bed alone was priceless, literally lying down on a fortune to sleep. Even Zhou Shun, standing in the back, was so shocked his hands were trembling. They had joined the Starfarer train for a while now and knew it was strong, but Chen Meng had never explicitly told them the levels of the accessories. So they had absolutely no idea this pile of stuff was all level 200. Just thinking about how many resources had to be burned to casually toss out these seemingly normal, but actually god-tier items was mind-boggling. On the contrary, Biaozi and old Zhu just coughed lightly and followed behind Chen Meng. Looking like this is normal, because the Starfarer train had always been low-key. But being low-key didn't mean being weak. It was just that these newcomers hadn't had the time to comprehend the true terror of the Starfarer train. Chen Meng didn't explain much. He just skimmed over it and left the control cabin, heading straight for the rear cars. As he walked, he spoke like a tour guide. Train armor, level 102. It can basically tank a direct hit from a main cannon in the Cosmic War 3 days ago. That's the moldy bread production line. Also level 200. When the train first started out, this was our main food source. Later, when supplies became abundant, this accessory was only used in special situations. This clothing production line is also level 200. The effects aren't bad. And that cola production line over there is level 202. The cola it produces has the same effect as the marrow cleansing pills from your civilization, but with a 100% cleansing efficacy. According to the original plan, I intended to make a name for myself at the Alchemist Grand Convention and then sell it in bulk. Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but curse inwardly. Going to an alchemy competition with soda? That's definitely weird. The armed black hole robot production line and the robot R&D center over there are also level 200. With just a small amount of resources, I can mass-produce troops. The batch of robots I gave Zhang Qiudao was produced right there. The steam bun production line is also level 200. Chen Meng walked straight to Car 10, looking at the several spatial portals embedded in the car. That's the movie set, used for filming on the train. There's also an entertainment area. The spatial portal next to it is level 200. Saying that, he pushed the door open. Inside was a pitch-black expanse. In the distance, a relatively small planet was glowing brightly. He called out softly, "Xiao AI." Very quickly, the planet moved close to the door, so close that everyone could clearly see countless ant-like robots mining day and night on its surface. A level 200 spatial portal can accommodate a planet with a diameter of no more than 100,000 kilometers. This is one of the mining planets. Countless mining robots are working around the clock. Then, Chen Meng closed the door, walked to the adjacent door in Car 10, and pushed it open. It was still a pitch-black space, but this time it was a planet with a massive amount of ocean water, deep blue, floating in the void. This is the Aqua Planet. It's also the mother planet of my civilization. It's also inside the train. I'll take you in to have a look. Saying that, he pressed a button on the doorframe, and a small wormhole appeared next to it. He stepped in first. The Tianji Pavilion Master and the others following behind were already stunned beyond belief, their limbs stiff with panic, but they still followed. These 8 people were the absolute rulers of Xuanwu Planet. They had seen and heard plenty of extraordinary things, and their strategic minds were top-notch. They knew perfectly well that Chun Mang was flexing his power to raise his voice in the negotiation, and they needed to stay calm so as not to fall into a disadvantage. But knowing it was one thing, doing it was another. Every scene unfolding before their eyes was directly shattering their worldview. For the first time, they learned that a train could actually contain 2 planets inside it. Honestly, if this was still called a train, then what exactly was a storage space? This is the Aqua Planet. Chun Mang walked through a city, his voice as calm as if he were recounting a daily routine. Also the mother planet of my civilization. My civilization does not belong to the Casa Civilization Federation. My civilization was just a very small planet in the universe, invaded by the Zerg civilization. Invaded might not be the right word. It's more accurate to say we were affected. The apocalypse descended. Countless people died. The masses suffered, unable to sleep peacefully at night. I spent over a year ending the apocalypse, restoring normal life, and then took my mother planet to begin our journey through the universe. My biggest goals are only 2. First, destroy the Zerg civilization. Second, destroy the Casa civilization. We are allies on the same front. Whether you give me this grand gift or not, this is still something I will do. Chun Mang stopped and pointed into the distance. Do you see those goblins over there? There wasn't a single human in the city, only a few goblins doing construction work. Every goblin looked dazed and panicked when they saw Chun Mang, as if they had suffered a lifetime of insomnia. When my mother planet faced the apocalypse, I met them. Their goblin civilization was destroyed by the Zerg civilization, and due to some errors, they turned into mindless monsters. Only a very small number of goblins retained their consciousness and memories. When I first met them, I was very weak. I needed their help. I promised them that if they helped me, I would help them rebuild the goblin civilization in the future. Chun Mang spoke as he walked, his voice calm, as if telling someone else's story. There are only over 100 goblins here, and only 2 of them still have their consciousness and memories. Even if I broke my promise, it wouldn't affect me at all. No one would even know. After all, to me right now, the help they provided back then is almost negligible. But I kept my word. Chun Mang walked to the center of the square, pointed at the twisted, mangled mass of a train placed right in the middle, and said calmly, "This is the goblin train. When we first met, I destroyed their train. When we first met, we didn't get along. We were even enemies. Later, we became friends. I brought that goblin train up from the abyss of the apocalypse, thousands of meters deep. Placing it here symbolizes the friendship between our 2 races. I will never forget my promise. Right now, I haven't officially helped the goblin civilization rebuild. The time hasn't come yet. My own civilization hasn't been rebuilt either. In the universe, I am still a wanderer without a civilization. But every goblin believes in me. They believe I will keep my word." Right at that moment, Daba led Mingda out of an alley, walked up to Chun Mang, and bowed respectfully. "Lord Mang." "Yeah." Chun Mang nodded slightly, then continued walking down the street, speaking as he went. His voice was steady, but every word struck like a nail. Many people on the Starfarer train used to be my enemies. We even clashed. But as long as they join the Starfarer train, I treat them all equally. In the entire universe, I am the only one with the ability to upgrade train accessories infinitely. I don't need any Murphy stones. As long as I have enough resources, I can upgrade accessories without limit. This is my unique method. I only need to spend a very small amount of resources to reach the heights of the strongest trains in the Casa civilization, or even surpass them. One day, I will wipe the Casa civilization and the Zerg civilization from the universe. That day won't be far off. After I take power, I won't arbitrarily destroy any civilization. I will give all civilizations the right to live. As long as they don't betray me, no civilization will be destroyed. It sounded very righteous, but also very terrifying. Because it came with one single condition: don't betray. Anyone who did was off the table. So now, Chun Mang stopped, turned around, and looked straight at the Tianji Pavilion Master, lowering his voice. "Do you want me to have 8 children to divide the resources into installments for me? Or do you want to accept a promise from me and hand over the resources all at once?" He looked calmly at the Tianji Pavilion Master, patiently waiting for an answer. He didn't hide anything. He had revealed many of the Starfarer train's inner workings, including his biggest trump card, the ability to upgrade infinitely. If this got out, it would definitely be trouble. But it couldn't be hidden on the train anyway. Many people already knew. And since they were at the negotiation table, he had to throw down a big enough trump card to exchange for greater benefits. It was that simple. At this moment, the eyes of the Tianji Pavilion Master and the 7 people behind him were filled with shock and disbelief. Especially one beautiful woman among them, who couldn't help but step forward and tug lightly on the Pavilion Master's sleeve, as if afraid he might accidentally say something stupid. This potential was something they had absolutely no idea about. No Murphy stones needed, just enough resources to upgrade accessories infinitely. This potential was truly S-rank, SS rank, the strongest in the vast universe. That meant, as long as there were enough resources, the Starfarer train could very likely explode in power in a short time, reaching a level on par with the Casa civilization. The Tianji Pavilion Master's lips trembled slightly. He tried to stay calm, but his age and state of mind couldn't hide the shock in his heart. And so, he inadvertently fell completely into a disadvantage in this negotiation. This was a guaranteed win. As long as Chen Mang wasn't ungrateful, this bet was a sure victory. 8 children, or 1 promise. He didn't turn around to ask the other 7, because the 7 burning gazes behind his back had already given the answer. Now they were just waiting for him to make the decision. The Tianji Pavilion Master slowly closed his eyes, let out a long breath, then opened his eyes to look at Chen Mang, bowing slightly. We want your promise. Just 1 promise. Trillions in resources will be fully delivered within 3 days. It won't be divided into installments. Actually, according to his original calculations, dividing it into installments was more reasonable and safer. Because without enough Murphy stones, it would be hard to spend that many resources in a short time anyway. But now, it was clear that handing it over all at once would be more beneficial for the Starfarer train. Since they had decided to give it, and Chen Mang was willing to lay his trump card on the table, the sincerity was sufficient. Dragging things out with installments now would only annoy the other party, ultimately doing more harm than good. Chen Mang laughed, stepped forward, and used both hands to help the Tianji Pavilion Master up. I give you my promise. Everyone present today is my trusted confidant. I promise in front of everyone. I am Chen Mang, and for the rest of my life, I will never forget your kindness. Chen Mang spoke slowly, every word striking like a nail. If there comes a day when I overthrow the rule of the Casa civilization, I will definitely protect the Xuanwu civilization. With me here, the Xuanwu civilization will never face a catastrophe. At the same time, I will do my utmost to promote your development, using measures like population migration to help the Xuanwu civilization regain its former glory. How about that? 2 lines of hot tears fell from the Tianji Pavilion Master's eyes. It was as if he had already seen the glorious future of the Xuanwu civilization. But deep in his eyes, a trace of sorrow still flashed. Father, do you see? Project Heavenly Revelation has succeeded. We have found an almost perfect candidate. The glory of the Xuanwu civilization is practically set in stone. It's just a pity you can't see this. You longed so much for Xuanwu to escape Casa's rule and restore its old glory. If you were still alive to witness this, you would surely be overjoyed. The Tianji Pavilion Master wiped his tears, tried to maintain his composure, and said, then next. Shall we have a light meal? Since both sides have reached an agreement, we should chat a bit more to understand each other better. Chen Mang paused for a beat, then nodded slightly. As you wish. The banquet began, held right in Goblin City. It wasn't grand, just an intimate meal. Everyone sat together, eating, drinking, and talking, but the atmosphere was still a bit weird. Like, they were close, but everyone had to force themselves to look happy. To put it bluntly, they were smiling out of obligation. Who could actually smile? At the banquet table, old Zhu kept wiping the sweat from his forehead. He was terrified to the core. Just a little bit more, and he might have been the one getting incense burned for him on this exact day next year. The reconstruction of the Aqua Planet City was entirely handled by old Zhu. Lord Mang rarely asked about it. This included rebuilding a city for the Goblin civilization. This was originally part of the plan, but initially, old Zhu wanted to pour all the resources into Taiping City. He really didn't want to waste resources on Goblin City, because after all, there were only over 100 goblins. Taking up a whole city was too wasteful. He had thought about just stuffing them into some apartment complex and calling it a day. But in the end, he strictly followed the requirements and built Goblin City properly. Thank goodness he didn't play any petty tricks and make his own decisions back then. Otherwise, today, when Lord Mang brought the Tianji Pavilion Master to Goblin City to give his speech, seeing a dilapidated, torn-up city, Lord Mang would have definitely made up a whole basket of excuses to keep talking, and then, the only one getting purged would be him. It was exactly like, mess up once, pay for it with your life. Now that there were more and more people on the Starfarer train, the competition was getting fiercer. Just one slip-up could turn into a massive mistake. Because of this, the banquet was quite subdued. Everyone was in a bad mood, or more accurately, most had to force a smile. The Tianji Pavilion Master and his companions were definitely in a great mood, because their chosen target was unbelievably perfect. Revival was practically a pre-written script. How could they not be happy? But they didn't dare to smile, especially after knowing that Zhou Shun, Xiu Yitao, the old man from the Jime Travel Company, young Master Li, and the others, the civilizations behind them had all been destroyed in this cosmic war. They dared even less to smile. They had experienced that crisis, so they understood that pain. Xuanwu planet had also lost quite a few people, but at least they hadn't been directly bombarded by the main cannons. They were only affected by the aftermath. The heaven-protecting Grand Array, powered by the lives of 8 soul formation experts, had blocked most of the meteorite fragments. So the casualties weren't so tragic that they couldn't be saved. The Tianji Pavilion Master raised his glass and asked directly, so in the future, if we truly encounter an irresistible crisis, can the Starfarer train take Xuanwu planet inside, just like the Aqua planet, and flee together? Chen Meng answered concisely, of course. But the train can only hold planets without a civilization mark. When the time comes, you'll have to erase Xuanwu planet's civilization mark. And while inside the train, you can't stamp it back on. Once we reach a safe place and let you out, you can stamp it back on if you want. The Tianji Pavilion Master nodded. I understand. He raised his glass, full of gratitude. Since the civilization seal was in his hands, erasing or stamping the mark wasn't difficult. Stamping a civilization mark was inherently very simple. Find an ownerless planet, take the seal, and stamp it. Then, in the universe, that planet belonged to your civilization. It would also show up as belonging to that civilization on special items like the galaxy map. In theory, as long as you were willing to run around, you could stamp hundreds of millions of planets. The prerequisite was that you could protect such a vast territory. Because the larger the territory, the more problems would arise. Right at that moment, young Master Li, sitting nearby, suddenly asked in a hoarse voice, Lord Meng, you just said your enemy hunting radar is level 200. Can I ask a question? In this cosmic war, did the Zerg civilization really invade? Chen Meng set his glass down, tilted his head to look at young Master Li, and stayed silent for a long time before asking back, why do you ask? The Zerg civilization had always been the imaginary enemy of the Kassa civilization. The Zerg's biggest advantage was their sheer, overwhelming numbers. Once they attacked, it would be an all-out assault, with battle lines stretching for tens of thousands of light years. And the Kassa civilization's biggest weakness was their small population. That was why they established the Kassa Civilization Federation, pulling in countless level 1 civilizations, placing them at the front lines as buffer zones and outposts. Then they used nearly 10,000 civilization trains to resist the flood-like saturation attacks of the Zerg civilization. The Kassa civilization couldn't match the Zerg civilization. This was the common consensus among everyone. Although the Zerg civilization was only a level 2 civilization, their combat power was terrifyingly unreasonable. The reason they hadn't gone to war with Kassa yet was entirely because they felt that taking a bite out of Kassa would cost them too much vitality. So they were accumulating power by swallowing up other civilizations, waiting for the day they could launch a total assault on Kassa. In the short term, logically speaking, the Zerg wouldn't even bother with Kassa. Chen Meng stayed silent for a moment, his gaze sweeping over young Master Li's anxious face, then to Zhou Shun and the others. He paused, then gently tapped his finger on the table, his voice chillingly calm. Actually, I could find countless reasons to refute you. You're looking at this too superficially. But, since you guys have already guessed something, I'll just say it straight. For the past 3 days, the enemy hunting radar hasn't detected a single entity from the Zerg civilization. Not a mothership, not a Zerg monster. Absolutely nothing. There was only the military of the Casa Civilization Federation in the universe. All the destroyed civilizations were wiped out by Casa's own hands. This was a farce they directed and acted out themselves. A farce? Young Masterly froze, his eyes turning red. He shot up from his seat, his voice trembling with anger and pain. My father is dead. My clansmen are all dead. Even the planet my father specifically used to grow onions is gone. Trillions of lives died in this war. And the result is that there was no enemy? It was all Casa's farce. Those trillions of lives. That's trillions of lives. Isn't Casa afraid? Aren't they afraid the souls of those trillions of lives will haunt them for the rest of their lives? Even the onion-growing planet was wiped clean. It was truly so ruthless they didn't even spare a single bulb. The old man from the Jime travel company, sitting nearby, just stayed silent. Actually, he had guessed this outcome a long time ago. Ever since he saw the words, total annihilation, on the Casa Daily News, he felt something was wrong. Since when was Casa that strong? But he didn't dare think in that direction, because the war had consumed too many resources and killed too many people. Even from Casa's perspective, he couldn't understand why they would do this. There was no reason at all. As for the reason, I'm not sure either. Chen Meng shook his head slightly. But we can be sure of one thing. The Casa civilization has gone mad. We have to get stronger as fast as possible to overthrow Casa's rule and bring clarity back to the universe. At this moment, the Tianji Pavilion master standing nearby suddenly gritted his teeth, as if he had decided on a difficult move. Lord Meng, if your trump card of infinite upgrades is exposed, will it have a major impact? Yes. Chen Meng tilted his head to look at him, answering very bluntly. The Starfarer train currently doesn't have the ability to withstand the full wrath of Casa. What are you trying to say? I want to spread this news so that all the civilizations in the 27th galaxy know that this incident was orchestrated by Casa themselves. So everyone clearly understands that in Casa's eyes, their lives aren't worth a dime. Then, we make Lord Meng's trump card public. Doing this might prompt many civilization leaders to pour all their resources into Lord Meng, helping the Starfarer train rapidly leap to a whole new level. It sounded reasonable, like throwing a stone into a lake to make the whole galaxy ripple. But if Casa rippled, it would be a tsunami. No, Chen Meng shook his head, rejecting it immediately. Once the news gets out, to erase the negative impact and prevent the remaining nearly 10,000 level 1 civilizations from panicking. Casa's best course of action would be to wipe out every civilization in the 27th galaxy. That's just seeking death. Besides, I've interacted with people from other civilizations. Most of them think war is still far away. Even with this warning, many people will still only care about their own little pockets. The probability of success isn't high. Not every civilization's management is as united as your Xuanwu civilization. And not every civilization is as decisive as your Xuanwu civilization, daring to bet their century-old foundation on a gamble. Most importantly, not every civilization is like your Xuanwu civilization. They can't build trains, but they'd still rather build their own. Even if it's slower, even if it's lower level, as long as it's their train, rather than relying on someone else's hands. Leave the rest to me to handle. Everything discussed today must be kept strictly confidential. Dismissed. 3 days later, it was time for the resource handover. Zhang Yi, Zhang Er, and the others carried the refrigerator, constantly going back and forth inside it, bringing massive amounts of resources back to the Starfarer train each time. The balance on the train's resource panel skyrocketed continuously. This was the century-old foundation of the cultivation world. Along with it came the 8 fairies. Even though the requirement to have children was gone, the 8 fairies were still sent over. Chen Meng temporarily arranged for them to stay in Car 4. He didn't refuse this gesture of goodwill. He had previously imagined that if other civilizations handed over all their foundational resources to him, he would take off immediately. But he also knew that was unrealistic, until he met the Xuanwu civilization. If every civilization could come up with a project heavenly revelation like the Xuanwu civilization, that would be great. He definitely wouldn't let those civilizations down. In breeding car 15 of the Starfarer train, a car that once had a strong presence was slowly fading into obscurity. The livestock and crops originally raised here had all been moved to the Aqua Planet, where there was more space and broader cultivation. Right now, only Uncle Lee, the young man, young Master Shun, and a bunch of zombies were left in the car. Uncle Lee sat slumped on the floor, looking panicked, his eyes full of confusion. The path he took to get here today was as bumpy as a pothole-filled road. Originally, his future was as bright as headlights. He was just about to finish researching the zombie spawner, and he held the position of Neon City's accountant. His future was truly limitless. He had even dreamed of climbing to the position of vice captain. But overnight, Neon City was completely empty, and the plans were temporarily halted. The zombie spawner hadn't seen any new progress in a long time either. Even though he still enjoyed the perks of a high-level talent, he felt like an invisible man on the train. Every day, watching Biaozi, Old Zhu, and the others running around busy while he was stuck in place, he felt so frustrated he wanted to explode. Everything was going so well. Why was he unemployed again? Was the job market really this tough nowadays? It was exactly like, before he could even get promoted, he was laid off by the Times. The young man sitting next to him said weakly, "Uncle Lee, why don't we change directions and find another job? Let's try one more time. I believe you can definitely do it." He had originally prepared to take over Uncle Lee's position, but Uncle Lee had suddenly stalled. And since it was one radish per hole, if Uncle Lee didn't move, he couldn't move either. Right at that moment, young Master Shun, tied to the cross nearby, trembled and broke down. "I beg you, just kill me. Can you please just kill me?" Uncle Lee irritably waved his hand, gagging him. Then he lowered his head, frowning in thought. He was the oldest person with a resident ID under 100, and also the first person to join the Starfarer train. He absolutely refused to accept being phased out by the Times. He had to find a new direction and make another bet. In Car 2, the Mecha R&D Center, Xiao Ai's cheeks clearly displayed the words shock and weird. She looked at the small pill in her hand. "You researched this?" Chi Kishio nodded repeatedly. Yes. During the last meeting, I realized Lord Mang has a lot of secrets. I thought, what if someone gets captured and tortured and accidentally spills the beans? So I continuously compressed steamed buns and made them into a small pill. It can be embedded in a tooth. If you get caught, you swallow this pill and choose to erase a part of your memory. That way, we guarantee the secrets won't be leaked. Do you think it's useful, Boss AI? He was already used to her way of speaking, even though he still thought there could be a more normal way to express things. But Boss AI seemed to enjoy this feeling of returning to her primal nature. Xiao AI nodded slightly. Very good. What did you use to compress it? A black hole beast? Yes. It's a type of demonic beast from the cultivation civilization. I saw them selling it in Zhongzhou City. This type of demonic beast can compress the mass of an object significantly. I heard that in ancient times, they could compress things infinitely, thereby creating a massive amount of black holes. Xiao AI looked a bit weirded out. Theoretically, anything continuously compressed can collapse into a black hole. I know that, even steamed buns. Although a black hole created from that would basically evaporate instantly. But I'm more curious. How exactly did you operate this whole process? Chi Kishio spoke very naturally. The black hole beast's physique is quite unique. Its mouth is huge, but its tail is extremely small. Whatever goes in through the mouth and comes out the tail keeps its mass, but its diameter shrinks significantly. You just have to stuff the whole steamed bun into its mouth. And then you take it out from the tail. Xiao AI gave him a look. You're really planning to embed that thing in a tooth? Chi Kishio hurriedly said, the inside of the black hole beast's body is very clean. There's absolutely no waste. Its mouth and tail are purely used for digging holes quickly underground. The dirt and rocks it digs up are pushed forward, compressed into small blocks inside its body, and then expelled out the back. Normally, it survives by absorbing spiritual energy, which is nuclear energy. Xiao AI glanced at Chi Kishio and didn't say anything more. Even if there was waste, science is science. Everything can be used. Even snake venom can be made into medicine, right? But she still nodded thoughtfully. You really gave me some inspiration. Quite a few demonic beasts on Xuanwu planet could be very useful to the Starfarer train. Wait here. I'm going to find Lord Mang to ask for some funding to buy a batch of demonic beasts. Chikashio blinked. The Tianji Pavilion Master is in the control cabin. Why don't you just ask the Pavilion Master for some directly? Xiao AI waved her hand, as if looking at an idiot. Are you stupid? How could I be so direct? I just need to say in front of the Pavilion Master that I want to ask for funding to buy demonic beasts. Won't he just gift them to me? It was exactly like asking without asking. Say one sentence, and the other person automatically knows they should offer it as a gift. You keep busy. I'm going to find Lord Mang. Inside the Starfarer train, Chun Mang sat in his chair chatting with the Tianji Pavilion Master. The atmosphere was quite harmonious. Everyone seemed extremely satisfied. The century-old foundation of the Xuanwu civilization this time. Various resources like iron, ore, and copper were combined, totaled nearly 100 trillion units. This was a massive amount of resources, enough to make anyone sweat just hearing about it. Naturally, Chun Mang was very pleased. And the Tianji Pavilion Master was also extremely satisfied. Project Heavenly Revelation was considered a perfect conclusion. The rest just depended on whether this chosen one could overthrow the Casa civilization or not. To put it bluntly, they had already gone all in. Now they were just waiting for Chun Mang's stock to rise. Far away in space, inside a strategic space station of the Casa civilization, the atmosphere was heavy enough to suffocate someone. An old man in casual clothes sat in a chair, slowly checking the records in the system. Standing next to him were Zhang Kaidi and his adjutant, both trembling uncontrollably as if they had just stepped out of an interrogation room. After a long time, the old man finally spoke leisurely. Zhang Kaidi, the whistleblower. After this incident was reported, you became a hero in the eyes of the public. The higher-ups are preparing to request a second-class merit for you. Zhang Kaidi was startled, a flash of joy in his eyes. Really? He couldn't help but ask again. With this second-class merit on his resume, he would be promoted in no time. In times of peace, earning merit was as hard as finding a needle in a haystack. But once you had it, it was a golden ticket to promotion. The adjutant standing nearby, who had been anxious, couldn't hide his secret excitement either. Because if the boss went up, he had a chance to take the seat. This old man was the person sent by the higher-ups to investigate this incident. His title was Commander of the Western Region, holding immense power and authority. The entire Casa Civilization Federation was divided into 5 regions: East, South, West, North, and Central. The Western region was the closest to the Zerg civilization, and it was also the region with the strongest military power and the most resources. Among all the regions, the commander of the Western region had the most power. For such a powerful figure to personally come and investigate, this completely exceeded Zhang Kaidi's imagination. He had originally planned that if he was investigated, he would use bribery, threats, and whatever else to cover up the secret. But playing those tricks in front of someone like this was like trying to poke a mountain with a toothpick. Just when he thought he was definitely exposed, the other party not only acknowledged him, but acted as if he hadn't found any clues at all. Zhang Kaidi laughed inwardly. That's right, he knew it. His plan was perfect. There couldn't be any flaws. Having this kind of confidence and not getting hit with karma would be a waste. Well done. The old man slowly stood up, walked over to Zhang Kaidi, and smiled. I really appreciate you, and that sword-bearer Zhang Xiaoping too. When the crisis hit, you two withstood immense pressure and made the most correct choice. Such strategy, courage, and decisiveness are truly rare. I have personally informed the HR department. You two will soon receive transfer orders to join my direct command, promoted by 1 rank, with a 3-tier increase in benefits. Zhang Kaidi was so excited he trembled. He quickly bowed, suppressing his excitement. Thank you for your high regard, Commander. From now on, I am willing to charge into battle for you, giving it my all. Wherever the commander points his sword, I am ready to die there. The commander didn't say anything more. He just chuckled, led his aides to the space station's docking port, boarded a shuttle, and returned to his own train. Around the space station, over 20 pitch-black trains that seemed to absorb all light were parked densely in the void. Their imposing presence was oppressive, intimidating enough to send chills down one's spine. This was the trusted army of the Western Region Commander. Phew. Zhang Kaidi watched the Western Region Commander's back as he left, breathing a sigh of relief. His body relaxed, and he slumped into his chair, lighting up a victory cigar. He leaned back, glancing smugly at his adjutant. How about that? Did you learn something? This is why I get promoted faster than you. In this world, the timid starve to death, and the bold reap a bountiful harvest. The adjutant nodded repeatedly. I learned it. Your plan was truly insane. This time, he was completely convinced, both in awe and excited. Finally, he could get promoted. He had endured in this position for 37 years. Come here. Zhang Kaidi exhaled a faint blue cloud of smoke, smiling comfortably. I'll teach you one more point. This point is even more important. The adjutant obediently stepped forward, leaning his ear in to listen. The next moment, a deafening gunshot rang out. Zhang Kaidi stood up from his chair, stretched his muscles, looked at the adjutant lying in a pool of blood, and sighed emotionally. This point is called, the fewer people who know a secret, the better. Did you learn it? Talk about graduating right after the lesson, no exam needed. He snapped his fingers lightly, and several robots carrying various tools began cleaning up the traces. Meanwhile, he happily hummed an unnamed tune, sat back in his chair, and scrolled through the news praising him as the whistleblower, his eyes full of smiles. Insane? Insane is right. If you're not insane, you can't become a demon. In space, inside the Western Region Commander's train, the old man was looking down, writing the investigation report for this incident. The aide standing next to him hesitated for a long time, finally unable to hold back. Commander, there are still many suspicious points in this investigation. Are we really just ending it like this? We didn't find any traces of wormhole energy fluctuations. The Zerg civilization is tens of thousands of light years away from the Casa civilization. Did they rely on the speed of their motherships to fly here, instead of going through a wormhole? The aide tried to stay calm, but his voice still trembled. Even though Zhang Kaidi said all the Zerg mothership wreckage was blown deep into space by the explosion. Before he could finish, the old man cut him off, his voice chillingly calm. Zhang Kaidi, the whistleblower. Sounds nice, doesn't it? The old man looked up, the corners of his mouth curling into a smile that wasn't quite a smile. Do you know how long it's been since I received a second-class merit? A very, very, very long time. And what about him? Zhang Kaidi actually earned a second-class merit by relying on this incident. It sounded as if in this life, the smart ones lived, and the stupid ones just served as background props. A long time ago, I disagreed with the higher-ups' plan. The old man tapped the end of his pen lightly on the desk, speaking slowly. What are the characteristics of the Zerg civilization? Infinite wormholes, rapid reproduction, infinite resurrection, devouring evolution. Just one of those traits is enough to support a civilization climbing to a high tier, yet the Zerg have all four. The higher-ups want to coexist peacefully with the Zerg, develop together, and wait until both sides are stronger before having a decisive battle. The old man paused for a beat, his gaze darkening. But, if we compete in development, what do we have to compete with the Zerg? The Zerg civilization is constantly expanding, invading surrounding civilizations, developing as fast as a storm. And what about our Casa civilization? The old man let out a cold laugh. A bunch of damn parasites, wasting a massive amount of the Federation's strategic resources for their own selfish gain. I don't even dare to think about it. If just one small corner dares to blatantly waste so many reserve resources, what about other places? On the surface, Casa looks as prosperous as a golden age, but inside, it might already be rotting with 1,000 wounds. I only know how to fight wars. The old man spoke very bluntly, without beating around the bush. I don't know how to manage things, but I am clear on 2 points. Point 1. We can no longer continue this race to see who develops faster with the Zerg. We must go to war. Even if our strength on paper is a bit weaker, as long as we fight, there's still hope, still a chance. Look at history. If the one who was stronger on paper always won, then there would be no need for war. Both sides could just have their commanders compare stats, and whoever is weaker could just bow their head and admit defeat to save time. Unfortunately, life doesn't operate like a leaderboard. Point 2. Only the chaos of war can force this rotting Casa civilization to unite. I want those who embezzled strategic resources to spit it all back out. If they don't, wartime has wartime methods. Everyone can be executed. Every family can have their assets confiscated. The aide next to him turned pale, his eyes trembling with terror. "Commander, this is no small matter. Please think twice." He thought the commander had missed some flaw, but who knew the commander saw it clear as day, just deliberately didn't say anything. And he was preparing to use this as an excuse to launch a war between the Kasa civilization and the Zerg civilization. Once a war broke out, it couldn't be stopped. Countless lives would fall, and this region would turn into a meat grinder, crushing every life. He knew Kasa and the Zerg would fight sooner or later, but he didn't expect it to be this soon. The aide tried to pull him back using proper procedures. "How about, we request further instructions from the higher-ups?" "Instructions?" A flash of disdain appeared in the old man's eyes, his voice growing colder. "What is there to say to those greedy fools?" Over the years, the strategic resources allocated to the Western region have been getting less and less. Who knows how many hands they've passed through? How much has been skimmed off? Secretly recount what happened here to my trusted confidants. Eliminate the pawns planted by other factions. In 3 days, the old man looked up, every word like a knife. "I want to see the entire army secretly assembled, waiting for my order to launch a total assault. If the higher-ups don't care, the Western military region will be wiped out." In a situation where Cass's lips and teeth are so closely reliant on each other, can they really just sit back and watch? "I have to tie everyone together with me to start this decisive battle. Competing in development with the Zerg is a foolish act." "Damn it," the old man sneered. "The Zerg civilization is full of insects, yet they have no parasites. The Kasa civilization is full of humans, yet it has a whole bunch of parasites. All these parasites deserve to die." Every sentence hit right at the heart. The only thing missing was the step of pulling the curtains and fixing them right then and there. The aide standing nearby trembled violently, his lips pale, unable to speak a word. He knew he had just witnessed firsthand the cause of an era-changing course. War had arrived, the final decisive battle between two advanced civilizations. If the Western military region really went to war, the Kasa civilization could only grit its teeth and follow through to the end. They couldn't just watch the Western military region get wiped out. And all of this originated from that damn Zhang Kaidi wanting to cover up his mistake. They had investigated it very clearly. In Zhang Kaidi's report, the cause was that several hidden strategic wormholes were destroyed in the chaos of war. But according to their on-site investigation, before the war even arrived, the coordinates of 2 hidden strategic wormholes already showed signs of extremely violent wormhole energy fluctuations. That meant, long before the war started, these 2 wormholes had already been activated. How they were activated, the aide didn't know, but every hidden strategic wormhole cost an immense amount of effort. Wasting 2 strategic-level assets for nothing meant Zhang Kaidi definitely had to bear the responsibility. Yet, to avoid taking responsibility, Zhang Kaidi directed this whole play of a Zerg invasion himself. That guy Zhang Kaidi was truly a madman. A madman who was even crowned a hero. Sometimes, this world is just hilariously ironic. More importantly, the commander had gone mad too. He completely ignored those flaws, preparing to use this as an excuse to directly launch a total assault. And this was even more outrageous. The aide always knew the commander was a staunch pro-war advocate, but wasn't this kind of staunch a bit too much? Even if they won in the end, and the Kasa civilization truly wiped out the Zerg civilization after the war ended, the commander would definitely be court-martialed and sentenced to death. Disobeying central deployment orders, secretly assembling a massive army, and launching a total assault on the Zerg civilization. How was this any different from treason? It was even worse than treason. Madness. Absolute madness. The aide stood frozen in place, his face pale, feeling completely out of place in this world. Why was everyone around him a bunch of lunatics? It got to the point where he started doubting. Maybe he was the one who wasn't normal. Should he go a little crazy too? No, being normal was right. He was just standing in the wrong crowd. 3 days later, Chun Meng left Xuanwu planet, officially concluding his relationship with this cultivation civilization. The Tianji Pavilion Master and the others remained on Xuanwu planet. When parting, they looked at Chun Meng with eyes full of expectation, hiding a hint of worry. But they weren't worried about him facing danger. They were worried it would be like throwing meat to a dog and having it run off, never to return. They had faith, but their wallets were still trembling. When they left, the aqua planet inside the Starfarer train had gained quite a few newly raised demonic beasts, all gifts from the Tianji Pavilion Master. You had to admit, this old man knew how to play the game. And in return, Chun Mang gifted the Tianji Pavilion Master 10 billion bottles of cola. Every bottle of cola was a top-grade marrow-cleansing pill. He originally planned to sell them, but since the two sides had become friends, he just gave them away for free, consuming 10 billion units of iron ore. With these marrow-cleansing pills, almost everyone in the Xuanwu civilization could significantly enhance their spiritual root talent, which was equivalent to directly boosting the foundation of an entire civilization. It was exactly like giving a gift that sounded like giving away the future. Who wouldn't feel like they hit the jackpot receiving that? At this time, the Starfarer train was drifting through space, slowly heading toward Furong planet. This planet was quite lucky, having survived the recent war intact. Chun Mang planned to go sell all the Scorching Sun clothing piled up in the train. Even though he had received a generous gift from the Tianji Pavilion Master and his fortune was now quite thick, what needed to be accumulated still had to be accumulated, and what needed to be spent had to be spent. The clothes were useless in his hands. Not selling them for money would be a complete waste. Chun Mang relaxed and leaned back in his chair. Too many things had happened these past few days. The plans he laid out had basically all been kicked off track by external forces. The marrow-cleansing pills couldn't be sold, and the travel commerce group couldn't be built, but the result was correct. In just a few days, he had earned nearly 100 trillion units of resources. The process was completely wrong, but the answer was spot on. It left him feeling helpless too. Many times, no matter how carefully you calculate, it can't beat the arrangements of fate. He clearly wanted to rely on his own methods to grow step by step, yet after all that tossing and turning, he ended up picking up nearly 100 trillion in resources. It looked just like a pay-to-win player breezing through a level. The exam-tested calculation, but his hands were picking up money like picking up leaves. He looked at the resource balance on the train's control panel. 5.1 trillion units of iron ore, 919.2 billion units of wood, 3.13 trillion units of copper ore, 919.4 billion units of crimson rock, 1.7 trillion units of titanium crystal ore. Iron ore, copper ore, and titanium crystal ore had all reached the trillion mark. Even wood, which had almost been depleted, was replenished to nearly a trillion. Next up was the grand upgrade. Level 100 was a threshold. Once past level 100, the upgrade costs for all components skyrocketed. Even this green-tier train steel armor only cost a little over a trillion iron ore to upgrade from level 1 to level 100. But going from level 100 to level 102 cost over 300 billion iron ore. This increase was no small matter. Upgrading followed the usual routine, prioritized defense first. Chun Mang originally thought level 100 defense was enough, but in actual use, he found it still a bit lacking. Facing a level 1 civilization, it was more than enough. But facing an advanced civilization, facing a planet-destroying main cannon, it seemed a bit thin. He had to ensure the armor was tough enough first, so he would have more room to maneuver. Chun Mang looked at the cost to upgrade the armor straight to level 200 and couldn't help but sigh. Exactly 30 trillion iron ore, no more, no less. The nearly century-old foundation of the Xuanwu civilization had only accumulated 5 trillion iron ore in total. To upgrade the armor to level 200, they would have to accumulate for another 600 years. He thought it was a massive amount of resources, but who knew? It wasn't even close to enough to upgrade the armor to level 200. Forget it. He pondered for a moment, then withdrew 4 trillion iron ore, upgrading the train steel armor component straight from level 102 to level 115 in one go. This level of defense was enough to do a lot of things. The firepower components of the Casa civilization's main battle trains were basically around level 101, so the current level 115 was sufficient. As long as a large-scale war didn't break out, level 115 armor could travel freely through the universe. It only took a minute in total. For trillion iron ore vanished completely, and he didn't even get a new supermodel effect. The contrast was incredibly stark. The resources the Xuanwu civilization had painstakingly accumulated over 100 years evaporated in his hands in exactly 1 minute. It really was like, other people's money is sweat and blood, his money is an upgrade animation. With 1.1 trillion resources left, Chen Meng prepared to upgrade the quantum main cannon as well. Even though he didn't plan on clashing with anyone and temporarily didn't need excessively high-level weapons, having it and not using it, versus needing it and not having it, were two completely different concepts. This was a 7-color tier component. After consuming 180 billion units of iron ore, this component was successfully upgraded to level 101. He couldn't afford level 200 for now. It would take nearly 5 trillion units of iron ore to reach level 200. Although it was much cheaper than the armor, it was still a number he couldn't handle right now. Thinking about it, it was a bit absurd. A green tier component actually required more to upgrade than a 7-color tier component. And thanks to that, he received a brand new supermodel effect. The level 100 supermodel effect of the quantum main cannon can cause violent destruction to a planetary core. So that's how it is. Chen Meng nodded, thinking deeper. It seems not every level 107-color firepower component can easily blow away a planet. But the quantum main cannon, thanks to its supermodel effect, could do it much easier. Level 100 attack intensity. Each shot required consuming 80 billion units of iron ore. This was after the consumption had been halved. Out of money, only a little over 900 billion units of iron ore left. It was exactly like, just finished upgrading and overnight, broke as a joke. He kept a little as a reserve in case of an emergency shortage of iron ore, then upgraded a few small components, and that was basically it. He had quite a bit of copper ore, but he didn't have any 7-color firepower components that used copper ore as ammo. So he had to figure that out later, see if there was a way to get a suitable one. Still not enough. Chen Meng sat in his chair and sighed. He knew the Xuanwu civilization had tried their best and hadn't hidden anything. The resources they offered were equivalent to several number 1 mining planets, but it still wasn't enough. Truly not enough. If the Starfarer train wanted to develop to the point of dominating the universe, it naturally couldn't just rely on a few mining planets or a few civilizations emptying their foundations. He needed a massive, even oceanic amount of resources to achieve that. Still have to think of a way to get it from the Casa civilization. Chen Meng leaned back in his chair, deep in thought. Whether it was the marrow cleansing pill plan or the travel group plan, both were guaranteed to be profitable, but the profits couldn't reach a scale like 5 trillion. Even the Jime travel group from before only had a market value of around 10 billion. Even if it inflated, it wouldn't inflate by much. But the Casa civilization was different. They were truly rich. Just one hidden strategic wormhole swallowed trillions, even tens of trillions of resources. After all, it spanned tens of thousands of light years. The cost of building a wormhole like that was naturally not small. If he could squeeze some resources out of Cass's hands, that would be perfect. Just a little bit of grease slipping through their fingers would be enough to feed him full. It's just, as for how to specifically operate it, he only had a vague idea and hadn't formed a clear plan yet. While he was still thinking, time passed very quickly. The Starfarer train had safely landed on Furong Planet, passed through the checkpoint, and entered the parking lot. Furong Planet was located in the 27th star system of the Casa Civilization Federation. It was the mother planet of the Furong civilization and quite famous throughout the entire Federation. Near this planet, there were many wormholes leading to the ruins of a mechanical civilization, so countless adventurers flocked here, diving into the wormholes to explore the ruins. At the same time, this place produced a massive amount of goods extracted from the ruins, such as the scorching sun clothing. This formed a massive market. Merchants from other civilizations gathered here, buying in bulk and then traveling to sell them everywhere. Simply put, this place was the wholesale hub for mechanical goods. It would be a waste not to come. Furong Planet, Qingshui City. Chen Meng led old Zhu and Biaozi's group down the unfamiliar streets, observing as they walked, then said softly, "The flavor of mechanical civilization is really strong here." The appearance of this city looked very familiar. It was exactly like the mechanical civilization cities he had encountered in the encounter maps before. Very similar. It was evident that the culture of this civilization was gradually being assimilated by the mechanical civilization, and the citizens highly identified with that culture. Humans, after all, everyone admires the strong. The Kasa civilization used iron-fisted, bloody methods to suppress nearly 10,000 civilizations. Yet among those 10,000 civilizations, there were still quite a few people who worshipped Kasa to the extreme. Even to the point where if someone from Kasa revealed their identity in a certain city, there would immediately be many ordinary women who usually looked aloof, hurrying to gather around, using clumsy words to flatter him, usually cold as ice. But the moment he meets Makasa, he melts like ice cream at noon. The old man from the gourmet tourism group temporarily separated from them. First, he drove the carriage to transport the remaining passengers to finish their interstellar tour, and then officially joined the starship. As for young Master Lee and the others, they had already become members of the starship and had iris chips implanted. For a while, the starship seemed to turn into a cursed orphanage. Basically, anyone who joined had dead parents. If this kind of recruitment were advertised, everyone would be terrified, but that was exactly the truth. Right at this moment, wee woo. The whole city suddenly flashed red lights, and ear-piercing sirens blared continuously. In the blink of an eye, the entire city was in chaos. But perhaps because they had experience, everyone knew the drill. They automatically ran to the nearest shelter, knowing exactly where to go without anyone pointing the way. The person in the back quickly put the refrigerator down, intending to let Chun Mang and the others go first. Hold on. Chun Mang looked at the giant screens outside the high-rise buildings, raising his hand to stop them, his voice low but decisive. The enemy detection radar shows that there's no army gathering within a 0.1 light-year radius. And all the screens simultaneously displayed the same image, a silver-haired old man in a military uniform, covered in medals. Though old, his spirit was sharper than a young man's. His eyes burned like fire, and every word he spoke slammed directly into the listener's ears. 6 days ago, the Zerg civilization secretly dispatched troops into Star System 27 of the Kasa Civilization Federation. They destroyed a total of 29 planets, and hundreds of billions of lives were lost as a result. The Kasa civilization has always pursued peaceful coexistence and believes that every civilization has the right to survive. But the Zerg civilization broke this consensus first. I am Li Wei, the Commander-in-Chief of the Western region of the Kasa Civilization Federation. Today, I am leading the entire army. We have activated the hidden strategic wormholes and arrived in the territory of the Zerg civilization, ready to launch an all-out war at any moment. We have waited too long for this battle. Because we pursue peace, the Zerg civilization mistook us for being weak. That is unforgivable. Only war can bring true peace. True peace is never achieved through concessions, but through fighting. Fight until everyone is too afraid to speak up. Fight until no one dares to provoke us anymore. Only then will there be peace. I now summon all carriages, all the able-bodied young men of our civilizations, to join the war. Based on a comprehensive evaluation of your carriage's strength, you will receive massive rewards after the war ends. Those who excel can even marry into the Kasa civilization, and their children can join the Kasa civilization. After he finished speaking, the camera shifted. Tens of thousands of high-level carriages formed a swarm-like formation, shooting deep into the universe, with countless stars behind them blurring into a cold background. It wasn't a joke. The war had truly begun. Everyone immediately realized that the previous invasion had become the fuse, directly triggering this great war. A war between two high-level civilizations. Once it started, there was basically no such thing as suing for peace or calling a truce. Both sides would drain their foundations, fighting until one side was completely annihilated, just like the Great War between the Zerg civilization and the mechanical civilization in the past. Chun Mang looked at the scrolling images on the screen, his face remaining calm. Sure enough, there aren't many. The entire army of the Western military region only had tens of thousands of carriages. It seemed the biggest weakness of the Kasa civilization was indeed its small population. The carriages were also few. Even though they were all high-level, few was still few. He just didn't know their specific component levels. If it's war, then it's war. Chun Mang withdrew his gaze, said no more, and continued walking down the street. He originally wanted to develop peacefully in a sufficiently peaceful era because war brought too many variables. But thinking about it differently, chaos was also an opportunity to fish in troubled waters. There were pros and cons. As long as he didn't cast his line and reel in a bomb. On the streets, many people were extremely agitated, their eyes red, clenching their fists and screaming, "Join the war! Join the war! I want to avenge my parents. Avenge our civilization. I want to join the war. I only wish for death." Most of these people were carriage captains. After many civilizations in Star System 27 were destroyed, many people in other civilizations became civilization-less wanderers. The feeling of their civilization being annihilated made them hate the Zerg civilization to the bone. And the moment the Kasa civilization launched its all-out attack, their will to fight exploded to the extreme. No one expected the Kasa civilization to be so tough, refusing to swallow any grievances and directly counterattacking. Chun Mang quietly watched the scene, saying nothing, just leaning on his cane and continuing to walk. In his opinion, competing to see who could develop faster than the Zerg was a stupid idea to begin with. Fighting was the right move, but they were too late. They should have jumped into the battlefield the very day the Zerg and mechanical civilizations went to war. If they had ganged up on the Zerg together, they might have had a chance to win. So much time had passed, and no one could measure how much the Zerg had developed. Back then, Kasa probably thought they could wait for both sides to suffer heavy losses and then reap the benefits. Who would have thought the Zerg would only get stronger as they fought, showing no signs of mutual destruction? As for Zhu Shun, Chiu Yi, and young Master Li walking behind Chun Mang, a hint of pity flashed in their eyes as they looked at the agitated crowd. These people didn't even know who their true enemy was. Their entire families were killed, and now they were preparing to lay down their lives for their enemy. The truth is often not as beautiful as a slogan. Shouting is easy. Waking up is the hard part. That kind of good outcome isn't called a surprise. It's called a perfect ending. Not long after, Chun Mang finally reached the largest market, preparing to sell off all the clothes here. Even if a war breaks out, it doesn't affect me selling clothes first. This kind of war, once started, would last at least a few decades, or even a century as a baseline. For example, the Great War between the mechanical civilization and the Zerg civilization back then lasted for a grueling 295 years before they were destroyed. Of course, before being destroyed, the mechanical civilization still managed to pull off a face-saving PR stunt. They changed their calendar so that one day counted as 1 year. So it sounded like they fought for 108,000 years before being wiped out. Sounded way more badass. Who knows which PR genius came up with this move right before going bankrupt? It was like trying to delete your web browser history right before dying in a car crash. What a bizarre coincidence. Truly, even in death, one must stay clean and keep their style. However, the Kasa civilization had taken the initiative to launch an all-out attack, so the battlefield must be in the Zerg civilization's territory. The advantage was that they wouldn't destroy their own territory. All the collateral damage would fall on enemy soil. The disadvantage went without saying. With such a long supply line, the logistical pressure was immense. From transmitting orders to transporting resources, they would have to burn through a massive amount of resources. But since they decided to go to war, the Kasa civilization must have prepared quite thoroughly. I just hope they don't waste too much. Because frankly, those things should be mine sooner or later. With so many resources and still being weak, what a waste of heaven's gifts. If they left it all to me, I would have wiped out the Zerg civilization from top to bottom a long time ago. I hate bugs. Right now, I don't have too much hope for the Kasa civilization. The winning odds are probably 70 to 30, but Kasa is on the 30 side. Even though Kasa was a level 3 civilization, and the Zerg were only level 2. But you couldn't ignore the Zerg's dazzling battle record. Looking into it, they were like heaven-defying masters. At this moment, deep in the universe, the army led by Li Wei was already 30,000 light-years away from Star System 27. Orders were continuously passed down. The Grand Army constantly spread out, advancing along multiple routes. Relying on the prearranged hidden strategic wormholes, they formed an encirclement to attack the Zerg civilization. At the same time, a large number of shuttle spacecraft were dispatched, immediately entering Zerg territory to scout for intelligence. In the leading command carriage, the adjutant held a Rubik's Cube-like object in his hand. Looking at the commander sitting in his chair, he asked tremblingly, "Commander, Central Command has sent messages multiple times. Are we going to answer this time?" Li Wei leaned back in his chair and calmly waved his hand. Very quickly, an image was projected into the air. Due to the extreme distance, the image was a bit laggy, but the audio was clear. It was the furious roar of a red-haired, white-eyed old man. "Li Wei, what the hell are you doing? Who gave you permission to lead the army and launch an all-out attack on your own? Are you trying to rebel? I order you. Return immediately." Return. Li Wei remained indifferent. Most of the hidden strategic wormholes were built as one way to save resources. Going is easy. Coming back is the hard part. This place is 30,000 light-years away from Star System 29, and we're about to make another wormhole jump. Even if my army's carriages travel at the speed of light, it would take 30,000 years to get back. What exactly are you trying to do? The red-haired, white-eyed old man grew even more furious. Back then, building all those one-way hidden strategic wormholes was to prepare for the base swap plan. That was a plan meant for when the Casa civilization was on the verge of extinction. At that time, we would send the entire army through the wormholes, destroying the planets in Zerg territory at any cost, fighting for mutual destruction. It's not that time yet. How dare you take the entire Western army and launch an all-out attack on your own? Who gave you this right? You guys did, of course. Li Wei burst into laughter. Back then, I suggested that high-ranking positions like commander should be rotated periodically to prevent local armed forces from losing control. But you guys said the Casa civilization had a small population, and rotating would affect combat power. Look, I've been in this position for nearly 100 years. I know everyone, and they all answer to me. My power is so great that even I'm scared of it. Saying that made it sound like he was bragging about becoming the final boss after being there so long. Li Wei continued, "If I want to launch an all-out attack without you guys knowing, isn't it way too easy? Besides, the Zerg civilization already sent troops to sneak attack Star System 27 first. Are we supposed to just keep enduring it? Endure it once, and the enemy will sneak attack a second time, a third time, until we can't take it anymore. Right now, you have two choices in front of you. One is to stand by and watch, letting the entire Western army be wiped out, and the Casa civilization strategic forces directly lose 1/5. Two is to quickly clear the resource transport lines, keep up with logistics and reinforcements, immediately enter a level 1 combat readiness state, and join me in launching an all-out attack. Even if we die, we'll die on the front lines. Although time is a bit tight, I believe you all have the ability to do it. Normally, you guys are indeed a bit short-sighted, a bit useless, a bit greedy, and honestly, a bit stupid. But when push comes to shove, I believe you can still do a great job. Good luck. History, at this very moment, will be rewritten by me and all of you. I live in the present, not for eternity. After the war, you can deal with me however you want. But history will remember me. Remember the one who fired this first shot." Li Wei seemed to suddenly remember something and sighed. Almost forgot. Before setting out, I audited all the strategic resources and found that 50% was missing. Tell me, are there too many parasites inside the Casa Civilization Federation? Those are resources for war, and yet some people dared to embezzle them. So before setting out, I confiscated the assets of all those parasites in the western region of the Casa Civilization Federation. Guess what? Not only did it make up for the missing strategic resources, but the total amount was 3 times more. Sometimes parasites are a good thing. At least when it comes to hoarding resources, they really have their ways. As for the people, of course, I killed them all. This sentence sounded calm but sent chills down the spine, like saying, after sweeping the trash, I conveniently cleaned up the people too. But their families all have top leaders serving as officials in the Central Command. I didn't have time to go kill them. They'll probably be very angry. Please explain it to them for me. I just didn't have time, so I temporarily let them off. If I make it back alive, tell them to wash their asses and wait for me. All of them must die. After speaking, Li Wei cut off the projection, sitting in his chair and continuing to review the intelligence brought back by the shuttle spacecraft. Central Command had no choice but to support him. As long as Li Wei had started the war, Even if countless people were furiously cursing him, Central Command had to grit their teeth and follow through to the end. They originally weren't sure they could win. If they let 1/5 of their strategic forces die now, they definitely wouldn't be able to fight later. Their only option was to go all in and push for a full-scale all-out attack. It's over. It's over. At this moment, in one of the army's carriages, a middle-aged man, his face drained of all color, was pacing back and forth in his single officer's quarters. He occasionally glanced at the cosmic scenery outside the window, completely unable to calm down. It was none other than Zhang Kaidi. The whistleblower Zhang Kaidi. He used to love this title, feeling it was absolutely perfect. But damn it, how did things escalate to this point? How did it suddenly turn into a full-scale, all-out attack? A great war was about to erupt. He never thought things would turn out like this. It was completely out of his control. Whistleblower? How the hell did he blow the whistle and turn it into his own funeral dirge? What he blew wasn't a damn whistle. It was clearly a swana. The most important thing was that he was in the Vanguard army, and the Vanguard definitely suffered the highest casualties. He truly didn't dare hope he would make it back alive. Was it still in time for him to go confess to the commander? To say that the Zerg civilization never invaded at all, and that it was actually all directed and acted out by him? Then he'd still be fucking dead. How did it suddenly turn into a situation where he dies no matter what? He figured it out. It all started when he pulled that damn guy into that damn group. Damn it. It was literally one click of a button, a lifetime of paying the price. Asterisk whoosh. Whoosh. Asterisk in the vast universe. The commander-in-chief of the Western Military Region sat in his chair, his cloudy pupils unrippled, quietly looking at the countless stars ahead. The universe was too vast. Even after multiple wormhole jumps, he still needed at least 10 days of marching to reach the Zerg civilization's territory. He wasn't a madman making blind bets. Even though he stubbornly wanted the Casa civilization's legacy to last forever, he wouldn't selfishly use the Casa civilization's legacy to gamble on an uncertain future. He had a 3% chance of absolute victory. This information stemmed from the annihilation of the Shirtian civilization a year ago. That civilization probably wasn't known to many people. Over a year ago, a civilization named the Shirtian civilization had just upgraded to a level 1 civilization within the Zerg civilization's territory. They were destroyed by the Zerg at a massive cost, creating hundreds of thousands of random wormholes to bring their grand army close and annihilate them. Anyone with a galactic map knew this very well. Even without a galactic map, carriage captains possessing 7-color grade wormhole radar components could grasp some of it. At that time, the Zerg civilization even proactively publicized all the wormhole coordinates to the surrounding areas, making many people aware of this event. This was a deterrent. It bluntly told everyone that outsiders were not allowed to pry into Zerg territory. Even if it was just a level 1 civilization that couldn't pose any threat whatsoever, as long as they appeared in their territory, they would be engulfed by terrifying wrath. It had to be said, for a long time, anyone who knew about this felt the deterrence of the Zerg civilization and didn't dare to act rashly. Especially the way they created hundreds of thousands of random wormholes in a single go, as if they had endless resources. But in his eyes, that incident actually exposed their weakness. It showed that on the main battlefield, the Zerg civilization had definitely encountered an extremely tough opponent. They might even be struggling to cope, which was why they were forced to ensure their rear was absolutely stable so as not to affect the frontline war. For that purpose, they didn't hesitate to waste massive resources using a sledgehammer to crack a nut, cleaning up their backyard while terrifying outsiders with the Zerg civilization's might. He had thought about it for a whole year, still finding it very hard to make a final decision. If he guessed wrong, this expedition would be no different from personally pushing the Casa civilization down the path of destruction, and he would become the greatest sinner in the history of the Casa civilization. But after experiencing Zhang Kaidi's incident in Star System 27, he became resolute and decisive. There were too many parasites inside the Casa civilization. Too many people had forgotten that war existed, not even believing there would be such a thing as war. Naively thinking that the Zerg civilization would always develop steadily and mind their own business. He couldn't delay any longer. If this dragged on, the final outcome would definitely be the Casa civilization dying at the hands of the Zerg civilization. He had to take a gamble. It wasn't that he liked gambling, nor was he a gambling addict, but it was time where he had no choice but to gamble. He didn't report to his superiors because he could guess what they would do. Once decided, it would be all in, betting everything they had to initiate this decisive battle. Whether he would go down in history or be cursed for eternity, it all depended on this trip. The old man gripped the armrests of his chair tightly. Clearly, his heart wasn't as calm as his exterior. Cold as ice on the outside, but inside, drums were probably beating wildly. Sai, Furong Planet, Qingshui City. Chun Mang led old Zhu and the others, standing in front of the largest trading market. Leaning on his cane, he looked up at the glaring sun overhead and muttered in bewilderment. Even this plan failed? Have I been having bad luck lately? He accepted the failure of the marrow cleansing pill and the tourism group plans, because that wasn't on him. There was external interference. But he didn't expect that even a simple plan like selling impotence-curing clothes would fail. He had specifically come to Furong Planet, the planet with the most mechanical civilization relic trades in the entire Casa Civilization Federation. He prepared to sell this pile of clothes, but ended up only selling a dozen or so sets, earning 20 billion units of iron ore, and then it completely stalled. In the entire market, there wasn't even anyone buying or asking to buy. And if they did buy, they forced the price down extremely low to only 1/10 or even lower. The reason was incredibly absurd. Commander Li Wei of the Casa Civilization's Western Military Region launched this all-out attack without receiving mobilization orders from Central Command. It was a completely unauthorized military operation. They say before the troops move, the rations go first. But before marching out, this old bro discovered that the strategic reserve resources had been hollowed out by up to 50% by a bunch of parasites. So Li Wei was decisively ruthless, slaughtering all the parasite families in the western region of the Casa Civilization Federation. The wealthy young masters and second-generation officials in this region. Almost all died overnight. Even the lucky ones who were traveling outside and didn't die had their families completely wiped out. And those families weren't weak to begin with. Everyone had their own ships. But in front of a corporatized military, they were just paper tigers, crumbling at a touch. The irony was, these wealthy young masters and second-generation officials were the biggest buyers of high-end impotence-curing clothes. Each of them, fighting for face, was willing to burn a huge sum of money to buy a set. The most direct impact of their deaths was that Chun Mang ran out of customers. His clients had been slaughtered. The merchants in the market got the news earliest. Knowing their bosses were dead, if they bought and hoarded the goods now, who knew when they'd be able to sell them? Naturally, they didn't dare to buy anymore. After all, this was a huge sum of money, let alone whether they could sell it or not. Just having the goods stuck for a few months was enough to bankrupt them. With this kind of large-scale trading, the most important thing was the turnover rate. The profit margin could be thin, but the turnaround had to be fast. Every day of inventory on hand was another day of risk. Therefore, his plan failed again. Chun Mang couldn't help but sigh again, lighting a cigarette and standing helplessly in the middle of the street. He felt that maybe he really was having bad luck. The city on Shoha Planet was called Sanshui City. The city on Xuanwu Planet was called Zhongzhou City. And here it was Qingshui City. Every single one had shui in it. Even the character, Zhou, had the 3-water radical. If that wasn't bad luck, what was? 3 consecutive plans failed, but he wasn't too depressed. After all, it wasn't because he messed up, it was all bizarre external interference that bankrupted his plans. Starting a business was like that too. Even with the right time, place, and people, some random chaotic event could suddenly pop up and ruin everything. Just like the time he sprayed Inca 12 before transmigrating to the previous world. Whatever. Treat it as fate. Let's go. After finishing his cigarette, Chun Mang tossed the butt into a nearby trash can and continued walking forward. If this plan was ruined, he'd just move on to the next one. And his next plan was very simple. Make money from the rich. Who was the richest in this region? The Casa Civilization was the richest. So what he wanted to earn was the Casa Civilization's money. He was preparing to enlist. That's right, enlist in the Free Army. The Casa Civilization's recruitment this time had 2 directions. The first direction was the regular army. You would be incorporated into a regular army unit, obey unified mobilization orders, receive military pay, get resource replenishments, and be rewarded after the war. To put it bluntly, getting into the system meant getting paid. Whether you'd live to collect it was another story. The second direction was the free army. The Kasa civilization provided nothing and asked no questions. They only granted wartime wormhole usage rights, allowing free travel to the Zerg territory to wreak havoc at will. What Chen Mang wanted to do was enlist in the free army. Once the war started, everything would become chaotic. And once it was chaotic, no one would have the free time to pay attention to him anymore. Then, he could borrow the Kasa civilization's countless wormholes, sneak into countless ownerless mineral planets, and scoop everything up into his ship, fishing in troubled waters. Without the Kasa civilization's foundation backing him, the starship temporarily didn't have the capability to travel that far in the universe. This massive wormhole network didn't just need resources. It also required a civilization's foundation and an extremely strong research system. Perhaps the Kasa civilization had already researched many 7-color grade components. As for his research team, it still hadn't been properly set up. They hadn't even finished researching a single white grade component. The gap between the two sides was still very large in every aspect. Catching up would be a long journey. Simply put, they had a highway to the stars, while his side was just learning to ride a bicycle. Furong Planet, Kasa civilization's military encampment area. A middle-aged man handed a chip to Chen Mang, his face cold as stone as he read word by word. You have passed the application to join the Kasa civilization's free army. This chip contains 30% of the Kasa civilization's strategic wormhole coordinates, along with usage rights. Every wormhole coordinate has an anti-leak design. Once the coordinates are leaked, the Kasa civilization will immediately know who the source is and will hunt you down at any cost. Thank you for your dedication to the Kasa Civilization Federation. All for peace. After speaking, the man waved his hand, signaling Chen Mang and his companions to disperse and make way for the people behind them. There was no vetting process whatsoever. Extremely decisive. The previously cumbersome rules seemed to have been wiped clean overnight. Everything became chillingly efficient. There were 2 long lines here. The left was for joining the regular army. The right was for joining the free army. And the line on the right was significantly longer. Clearly, most people who chose the free army had the same goal as him. Let the Kasa civilization's grand army take the brunt of the attack. While they sneaked into unnoticed corners, hoping to grab an ownerless mineral planet. Once they grabbed one, it would be like hitting the jackpot. Therefore, private family fleets, some large merchant guilds, and even space pirates, all mingled together, flocking to register for the free army, only giving 30% of the coordinates and strategic wormhole usage rights. Chen Mang casually handed the chip to Xiao AI beside him, sighing. A bit stingy, isn't it? I thought we'd get 100%. It's wartime, and they're still not being straightforward. Let's see how many there are. Less than a second later, Xiao AI reported. A total of 82,803 wormholes. Basically, you can travel to any corner within a radius of tens of thousands of light years. The furthest wormhole can even reach deep into the core area of the Zerg civilization. Among them, 1,892 are hidden strategic wormholes, currently unactivated. There are no 2-way wormholes. All of them are one-way. All one-way. Chen Mang frowned slightly. He understood why the Kasa civilization did this. Exposing wormhole coordinates meant the Zerg could also use them to sneak straight into Kasa's core area, which was extremely dangerous. Exposing one-way wormholes wouldn't cause any harm to Kasa. But didn't that mean going was easy, but coming back was hard? How were they supposed to return? Even if they treated us as a suicide squad, they didn't need to be so blunt about it, not even giving a sliver of hope for survival. They did give it. After the war ends, the Kasa civilization's grand army will contact us and bring us home through 2-way wormholes. Great. Chen Mang nodded slightly. Those words sounded like coaxing a child. He didn't believe it, and clearly, many others didn't believe it either. Yet they still rushed in without hesitation. After all, the benefits were too great. How much could you make being a pirate? If you found an ownerless mineral planet, you'd truly be rich for generations without a worry. Just then, he suddenly noticed a group of people in the right line with a very familiar logo. The people around looked at that group with fear and instinctively backed away. It was the pirate group, Philia. This group was also joining the Free Army. Chen Meng looked at them, remaining silent and expressionless for a long time before softly saying, "I'm actually someone who takes promises very seriously. Even though the plan failed, I promised that little girl I would help her avenge her father." Xiao AI, use the enemy detection radar to lock onto this group. Then bring out the robots, find a secluded spot, and prepare to move. Understood. Young Masterly, standing nearby, was slightly stunned. A hint of bewilderment flashed in his usually melancholic eyes. He didn't expect that even now, Lord Meng still remembered his promise to that little girl. He remembered her, and he remembered yelling at her, because he truly felt she was being unreasonable and a bit foolish. But after hearing the news that she committed suicide by jumping off a building, he regretted the harsh words he had spoken. He always thought that with her father dead and her family facing a crisis, she should have been more sensible, pulled herself together, and wised up. Thinking that way made logical sense, but in real life, who has the time to be logical when they're in pain? But now he saw clearly. Knowing is easy, doing is hard. Unifying knowledge and action is an extremely arduous task. The Datong civilization had been completely destroyed, and he too found it hard to pull himself together. If the starship hadn't given him a faint glimmer of hope for revenge, he probably would have jumped off a building too. Thinking from that little girl's perspective, a little princess always protected by her father and uncle, living happily every day, with a well-off family background. Suddenly facing a massive tragedy, it was completely understandable that she couldn't accept it. If she had overcome it, her mindset would definitely have matured a lot later on. It was just a pity that she couldn't overcome it. Outsiders often say, "Be strong," but when the pain hits, everyone is only human. Furong Planet, Qingshui City, the wilderness. The sun hung high in the sky. A few off-road vehicles speeding along gradually slowed down, then were forced to a complete stop. Almost instantly, the convoy formed a combat formation. Multiple guns poked out of the windows, aiming at the enemies, tightening the encirclement outside. The leading man, his face grim, hurriedly turned on his walkie-talkie. "Boss, we're surrounded. Tens of thousands of robots, strength unknown, are surrounding us. They haven't opened fire yet. Requesting backup." After speaking, he took a deep breath and used the car's external speaker to call out, "Which brothers are working here? If this is a misunderstanding, like a flood washing away the Dragon King's temple, then you guys have blocked the wrong people. This is the ground action unit of the Philia pirate group. Can the leader come out and say a few words?" His words were tough, but his face grew uglier by the second. They were all people who made a living in blood. In this line of work, blocking the wrong people was a massive taboo, almost impossible to commit by mistake. The other side was clearly targeting them. Tens of thousands of armed robots. This foundation was not weak at all. Doing this job offended a lot of people. God knows which group had come seeking revenge. The man pulled the bolt of the gun in his hand, looking at the armed robots slowly closing in, his voice turning hoarse. "We definitely can't break out. Brothers, today, we might all have to leave our lives here. Tell the guys to quickly leave their wills and transmit them out while the enemy hasn't cut our communications. Everyone, stay sharp. Doing this job, you had to know this day would come sooner or later. You enjoyed it when we were drinking and eating meat. And now that you're about to die, you know fear? You regret getting into this business. Crying and whining like a bunch of women." It was the classic case of cursing tough, but shaking for real. Around the off-road vehicles, countless armed robots holding tsunami Gatling guns formed an encirclement, slowly closing in. No one opened fire, and their speed wasn't fast, but the sense of threat was heavy, pressing on their chests as if the Grim Reaper were beating a drum in their hearts. Very quickly, the encirclement closed completely. The robots had approached to within 10 meters of the off-road vehicles, practically right in front of their eyes. Just then, a gap suddenly opened in the encirclement. A young man leaning on a cane walked out alone from behind the robot squad. He walked straight to the off-road vehicle and said softly, "Come down and talk. It's hot in the car." The middle-aged man immediately pressed down the barrel of his subordinate's gun next to him, shot him a glance, then took a deep breath, hid his gun in the spatial pouch behind his waist, and stepped out of the car alone. He had never met this person, but for the other party to dare walk right up to them in the flesh, there was an 80% chance he had solid backing. Firing first at this moment would truly be digging their own graves. The middle-aged man stood in front of the young man, speaking seriously word by word. This is the ground action unit of the Philia pirate group. I don't know if you guys blocked the wrong people or if we have some misunderstanding. If it's convenient, please clarify. Chen Mang looked at him, his voice casual. I heard your leader is a goblin. Is that rumor true? The middle-aged man's lips moved for a moment, and finally, he replied. You've already called for help, right? Then let's wait a bit. After speaking, Chen Mang stood still. In his mind, goblins were a fairly pure race, only wanting to farm and develop. There was no reason for them to kill a tourism company CEO for no reason. At a glance, the two sides had no intersection of interests. If possible, he hoped this was a misunderstanding. He didn't want to kill a goblin, even if this goblin was in a different faction from Daba and Minduo. 15 minutes later, a massive ship flew over from afar, rushing straight above Chen Mang and the others, then hovering 3 meters above the ground. The ship's door opened, and a goblin jumped down, surrounded by many subordinates. Not bad agility, Chen Mang softly praised. The goblin walked straight up to Chen Mang, followed by a group of burly men. He looked up, sized him up a few times, and said, You blocked my people but didn't make a move. So you have business with me. Seeing the boss arrive, the man who had just stepped out of the off-road vehicle immediately felt backed up. He stepped back, breathing a sigh of relief, as if the situation had reversed. Chen Mang stood in place, looking at the group of people in front of him. Only the leader was a goblin. The rest behind him were all humans, all burly, and yet they genuinely submitted to this goblin. Humans were inherently arrogant. Normally, they might submit to the strong, but submitting to an alien race was very difficult. Yet here, their submission was strangely natural. Chen Mang said nothing. He flicked his index finger, and the starship immediately rushed over at extreme speed, hovering above everyone's heads. It blocked out almost all the sunlight, plunging the ground into darkness in an instant. This kind of prelude made it clear. The talk might be soft, but everyone knew what was coming wouldn't be soft at all. Right after, someone suddenly jumped down from the goblin's ship, leaned in, and whispered a few words in his ear. The goblin's expression changed slightly. He looked up at Chen Mang. Level 115 ship armor. Someone at your level, going to such great lengths to find me? I made a promise to a friend, so of course I have to follow through. Chen Mang smiled faintly, looking down at the goblin. He didn't intend to hide his ship's component levels, because as long as the other party had component detection tools, it would be exposed sooner or later. Before talking, revealing a portion of his strength made the conversation more effective. And he wasn't worried, because this group of people wasn't escaping today no matter what. Whether the Philia group killed the person or not, they had no way out. I have a friend. She's the daughter of the CEO of the Gourmet Tourism Company. Her father was killed by you guys. I promised to help her get revenge. Now you have 3 sentences to explain that this wasn't done by you. If you don't explain it clearly in 3 sentences, all of you will die right here. The goblin's expression shifted slightly. He shook his head, speaking word by word. I know that person, but he wasn't killed by us. That's sentence 1, Chen Mang replied calmly. The goblin gritted his teeth. It really wasn't us who killed him, but I can't say who did. That's sentence 2. Chen Mang nodded slightly. The goblin stopped talking, just grimly looking up at the starship overhead. Then he looked at Chen Mang right in front of him, weighing his options for a few seconds. Finally, he spoke in a long, hoarse breath. That person was killed by Zhang Kaidi, the whistleblower of the Kasa civilization, Zhang Kaidi. He lusted after his daughter's beauty and constantly pressured him to hand her over, or else he'd cut off his business. He brought a large sum of money to find me, asking for my help. Because I had saved his life once, he considered me the most capable person he knew. I didn't agree. I don't have that kind of capability. Before he met his end, he told me he would personally bring a large sum of money to find Zhang Kaidi to settle things. After that, he died. He spoke continuously, almost without pausing for breath. After finishing, he took a deep breath. That's the 3rd sentence. I've spoken clearly enough. Seems your lungs aren't very healthy. Chen Mang dropped a comment. The goblin glared at him. I'm this small. How big do you think my lungs can be? Well, I'd have to dig them out to see. Chun Mang replied nonchalantly. Never mind. He clicked his tongue and changed his tone. If it's as you say, then why did his daughter think you guys killed him? The goblin was silent for a long time before saying, After I found out, I went to find Zhang Kaidi once, brought his body back, and handed it over to his subordinates. I told them that I was the one who killed him. I didn't dare say Zhang Kaidi killed him. Zhang Kaidi is from a level 3 civilization and has power. I didn't dare provoke him. It cost me a lot of money, plus a bit of face, just to bring the body back. I was afraid that if they knew Zhang Kaidi killed him, they would act recklessly and anger him. Then his daughter and subordinates would have to die too, and it might even implicate me. So I had to take the blame. I really didn't know his daughter had a friend as strong as you. It's not that I'm afraid of you. It's just that I didn't do this, and I can't carry this blame. I don't believe it. Chen Meng shook his head. Zhang Kaidi is an officer of the Kasa civilization, while that girl's father was just a small boss from a level 1 civilization. If he wanted a woman, why would he need to apply pressure? He could just take her directly. Who would dare stop him? Or with just one word, the head of the civilization would have to deliver the woman himself. Why beat around the bush like that? It's true. The goblin's face grew even uglier. Zhang Kaidi is a bit of a pervert. He doesn't like that style. He finds it lacks flavor. He mainly enjoys the feeling of watching a father suffer, struggle, and then personally hand over his own daughter. What's more, he has to do it right in front of the father. It's just that the guy was pretty stubborn. The last time, he didn't just bring generous gifts, he also brought weapons. He fought to the death. He didn't manage to kill anyone, but he lost his own life. Furthermore, before he went, as far as I know, he took all the company's working capital. I thought the company would go bankrupt, so I planned to take the opportunity to step in and help. Who knew the company would keep operating? I don't know how they did it either. I have surveillance footage and chat logs, the goblin said quickly. I'll send someone to get them. A minute later, Chun Meng received a chip and handed it to Xiao AI. On the screen Xiao AI brought up, it clearly showed the first time the goblin met that man. The girl's father was blocked by pirates, and the goblin stepped in to help. Why did you help? That was my territory. I don't allow others to plunder on my territory. Next were the chat logs. Just as the goblin said, before the incident, the girl's father had contacted him for help. But the goblin tactfully refused and advised that it would be best to sell the company and move somewhere else to live. Xiao AI stated that these videos and chat logs showed no signs of editing. They were verified as authentic. That meant the true enemy wasn't the Philia pirate group, but Zhang Kaidi. Chen Meng was silent for a long time. Finally, he looked up at the goblin. This matter is temporarily concluded. In the future, if there are no issues, I won't come looking for you over this matter again.